Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome back to Time to Laugh. If you don't know, I'm Haley. If you are new, welcome in. If you're a returner, welcome back. I'm so excited to be continuing on this journey. It's been so fun, and I love that I'm starting to build a little bit of a community, and I have some people coming back every week, so it's been super fun for me, and I'm honestly just really enjoying figuring out how to do this. It's been a lot of learning new things and trying to figure out the technology of it all and all that, but it's been really fun, and it's just been a learning process, and I think that that is something I always want to be doing, is learning. And so it's been a fun journey. And if you weren't here the last couple Twitch streams I did, I was reading a book called The Baby Catcher Gate by Wendy Jo Cerna. You can go back on my Twitch stream and watch those. I'll probably post them on YouTube as well. But I read the entire book out loud, so it's basically like listening to an audiobook, but a little bit more fun and interactive, because I'm, chatting with you guys, making comments, having my reactions, all the different things. So if you want to go watch those, you're more than welcome to. They're on my Twitch channel, and I'll probably post them on YouTube as well. Same handle, Time to Laugh 34 on YouTube. And yeah, so that book was incredible. Gave it 5 stars. I am probably a little, I don't know. I think some people might think that I'm a little generous with my 5 stars, but my rating of stars is kind of simple. I typically will give 5 stars to anything that I would want to read again. Which often means that I buy the book, and so that I have a physical copy of it so I can always read it again. And I don't know. I mean, even if there's parts that annoy me, even if there's parts that I'm like, oh, maybe that wasn't quite the best, if I would want to read it again, I'll give it 5 stars. Because then, part of the reason why is it helps me when I'm going back through my, Goodreads, and I'm looking through all my books that I've read. I can filter it by 5 stars, and I can see, okay, these are all the books that I want to read again. So then I can go be like, okay, for example, sometimes I am just in a rut with reading, and I'm a little bit of a mood reader, so sometimes I will just, nothing will suit my fancy, nothing will excite me. I'm like, oh, I don't want to jump into a huge, dense fantasy, or I just am not really sure what to read. Sometimes I will just go back and reread a book that I know that I love. So I'll just go back through my Goodreads and look at all the books that I've read or rated 5 stars, and I'll just read one of those. And it kind of gets my momentum back going, which is always kind of fun. So, yeah, I feel like, good morning, Slow Gamer. I am doing great. I had an incredible weekend. My church we had a Cherish night. Cherish is our women's ministry at my church. And so we had a Cherish night on Friday, and it was so much fun. We had one of our pastors from our Boise campus come in and share a word that was so powerful. And then we did an after party, and it was just a dance party, because our theme for the night was pajamas and Polaroids. And so we were all in our, silky pajama sets and, face masks, all that kind of stuff. And we just had a dance party in the lobby of our church, and it was so much fun. So that was fun. Definitely was a little bit sore the next day, because I was dancing the night away, and I haven't danced like that in a while. So, but yeah, and then worked Saturday. And then church yesterday was incredible. So it was a long day yesterday, but we got some good sleep. So we're ready to go. We're ready to jump back into a book. Oh yeah, awesome. Definitely. I'm sure there's. Oh, also, sorry. I don't know if you can hear me very well. Jeez Louise. Totally forgot that my my mic was. I had it curved up here. Hopefully you can hear me a little bit better now. Okay, anyways, yes, I would encourage you to look around for churches, and something, actually, this is kind of, again, this is niche, and, not everybody that's tuning in may care about the whole church conversation, but it is a huge part of my life. My faith is my cornerstone of my life, so it's something that I'm always going to be talking about. So I
I feel like when you're, I don't even want to say like church shopping, but when you're trying to find your home church, I feel like that's the best way to say it. When you're trying to find your home church, I think it's always important to remember that churches can never please everybody. And obviously, there's going to be things that you might be looking for specifically in a church, excuse me, or might want to find in a church. But it's also important to not go in with prejudice, to not go into churches thinking they're going to be able to please or check every box that's on your list. And again, you might not be asking for my opinion at this moment, but I just something I want to share. So if people, care about my opinion or just have questions, then they know that they can ask me. Sorry, geez. But anyways, but then I think in that I think it's very important to find a home church and to find a church that you feel like you can be fully planted in and you can press into and find good community. Because I think, especially in today's culture where we love instant gratification and we want people to please us, it's really easy to just continue to hop around and only look for churches that are gonna check every single box and or just not be planted in a church. And I think that's one of the most important things for us as Christians is to be planted in a church. Obviously, I think the most important thing is the theology of the church and that the church is aligned with biblical values and beliefs. But if that requirement is met, I think that's the most important thing. And then from there, obviously you have worship and you have the pastors and how they do leadership and all the different factors and things. But sorry. But anyways, okay. Yeah. Raised in a Baptist church. That's the other thing too, is that there's always, obviously there's so many different denominations, and so there's a lot of different upbringings, a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different ways that you can go about things. I was raised in a Presbyterian church, and so I was raised in the, church with the pews and the liturgical, which is kind of like, for those who don't know what liturgical means, it's basically, a liturgy is kind of like the order of things. And so for my church growing up, we had our bulletins, and it wasn't like regimented, I would say, but it had the order to the church service. And so there was, it would be a couple songs and then a prayer and then a couple songs and a confession of faith, or, there's just different elements that they have, and it goes in a certain order, and they obviously change what's happening within that order, but it has the order. And nothing wrong with that at all. Obviously, every church has a liturgy because every church has a run sheet or a way that they do things every Sunday. And so, but yeah, it was very, stand up, sit down in the pews. At times, I would say it did feel a little bit, I don't know if stingy is the right word, but yeah, that's where I grew up, and obviously it was a great church. The theology was great. The pastors were awesome. But my church now is a non-denominational charismatic church, and it was very new for me when I first went. I started going because I had reconnected with my college coaches, and they were going to the church at the time, and they've now moved, but so I went there and I was like, whoa, because I grew up in a church that was very, like, not a lot of people raised their hands in worship. It was all hymnals. It wasn't like contemporary Christian music or like contemporary worship music, which, love hymnals. Hymnals have their time and place. They're incredibly in-depth, well-written, all those different things. But it was all very new to me in the beginning, but now I'm so planted in the church that I'm at now, and my community is the strongest it's ever been. I literally could not imagine myself anywhere else. So actually, I don't know where you're at in California, but my church, it's called Awaken. They actually started in San Diego. Our lead pastor is Pastor Jurgen and Leanne. They came from Australia, and they planted Awaken in San Diego. We have, I think, 8 or 9 campuses in San Diego, and then we have a campus in Boise, Salt Lake City, Seattle, and then we're getting ready to launch one in Florida. And so anyways, I don't know if you're anywhere close to San Diego, but if you are, you could look up Awaken and see if it's something that you would be interested in, because I love my church. But anyways, I digress. Sorry, that was a little tangent soapbox, but it's important to me. So thank you so much. I tried to curl it yesterday with some sock curls, but it didn't hold super well. But you know, we kind of wake up and just go with whatever is the situation in the morning, because yeah. Anyways, okay. So, I'm going to get into it, but first thing I'm going to do is, I just, want to give you guys some more elements into what I do, just kind of on a daily basis. So I wanted to, first things first, update my bullet journal for the day. Do you ever wish that I'm sure you wish you had straight hair at some points, because I feel like every person with straight hair wishes for curly hair sometimes, and every person with curly hair wishes for straight hair sometimes. And that's why people created hot tools, so that you could make your hair what it's not. I actually have naturally wavy hair, which I still am kind of learning how to style, because it's kind of thin. Like, I have a lot of it, but it's fairly thin, and so it gets weighed down really easily. And so I haven't really figured out how to style it super well when it's wavy. But like when it dries, it doesn't dry straight, it dries wavy. Yeah. Wow, really curly then, if it gets stuck in your curls. That's crazy. Okay, so if you follow me on Instagram, you will probably have seen my time lapse of my May bullet journal spread, which was actually really fun to make. I just set my phone up on my windowsill and put it as a down view of my my bullet journal, and I was watching a YouTube video, so I muted the actual video and put a song over it. But so this is my May spread. That's my cover page, and then this was my I always do a month calendar spread, and then these are the 2 constant pages that I have. So this side is my highlights page. So basically I write down just a good thing from the day. And I try to do it every day, and sometimes it's really easy, sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes I get a couple days behind, like today, and I have to look at my phone and remember what I did that day. And then I have this page over here for my reading, so it's kind of like a reading log for me. So I have my little, I don't know if you guys can see, I have my little bookshelf up here, so this is where I put the books that I finish, and then I put the titles and my rating for them down here. And then I've been trying to journal more. So then from there, I try to keep the theme going on the tops of the pages, but then I basically just journal from there. So for example, last month, which I actually really liked my April spread. So this is what my April spread looked like. And, I tried to keep the theme going throughout the whole thing. So even when I was journaling and doing my book reviews and stuff, I keep the theme going on the top. And sometimes I forget how close I am to a new month, so sometimes I'm a little bit rushed on my bullet journal spreads, but Pinterest is my saving grace when it comes to my bullet journals, because I don't want to say I'm not an artist, because I obviously am. I'm creating things, I'm able to draw well enough, but I am not necessarily the creative in the sense that I can just come up with things and just draw them. Pinterest is my saving grace, because I go on to Pinterest and I look up bullet journal spreads. Sometimes I'll look up a specific color theme. Sometimes I'll look up a specific maybe holiday theme for the month or something. And then I'll find one that I like, and then I'll basically copy it or just use that as inspo. So that's what I did for this one. I actually had a picture on Pinterest pulled up of one of these cherry blossom trees, and I based it off of that. So it's obviously not exact, but I just look at the photo and then draw it on the page. So yeah, so that's what I do. And then I haven't done my book reviews yet for the 2 books that I've finished so far in May, but I have a little mini print canon thing that I got it was actually a gift from a family member. And it's been one of my most used gifts I've ever gotten, because I will find a photo of the cover online and I'll save it to my phone, and then I can print it out, and it comes with these little sticky photos. So I will stick them into my bullet journal, and that's how I'll do my reviews. So I have my Baby Catcher Gate, which was the one that I finished on stream, read and finished on stream. And then I have another book that I was reading called Dungeon Crawler Carl. And that one was super interesting. I won't go into detail now because I want to get into reading my book, but it was actually a recommendation from a regular at my job, and didn't really know anything about it, so went in completely blind, and it was interesting but so good. Like, I was locked in from the first chapter. So I'll update those later in my bullet journal, but kind of wanted to give you guys a little rundown of that, and I'll show you a completed one from the past month. So here's one, for example, that I did. So Silver Elite, I actually started that on stream, but then because I started reading Baby Catcher Gate out loud, I ended up finishing it just on my own time, and it was so good. I don't have it close to me, but I bought the second book in the series because it just came out this month, and I've started it, and it's already really good. But anyways, would definitely recommend Silver Elite. But yeah, I basically just put the info here, like the title, author, genre, the date that I finished it, the method of it, because I like to see, like, did I read it on my Kindle? Did I read a hardback? Did I read, and then the number of pages and my rating. And then I always do on the bottom, I do some of my favorite quotes. So for physical books, I'll flip through, and this is again why I do my little tabs on the pages, because then I can flip through and I can see all the different things that I tabbed, and I'll write down some of my favorite quotes. And if I do my Kindle, then it obviously stores all of my Kindle highlights in my Goodreads, so I'll scroll through that and find the ones that I like. So but something that I really want to do is start filming and posting like mini reviews, basically, of books that I finish, on just posting them as reels on my Instagram. So I'm still working on the format of that and what that's going to look like, because I want it to be fairly, like, I want to have a what's it called, an outline for the specific things that I want to hit about the books, and so I'm still working on what that's going to look like, and what that's going to be, so that then I can obviously go off on tangents and go into more depth on specific things for specific books. But I want to have an outline that I can kind of follow for each one, so that they stay fairly consistent with that. So still working on that, but that's something that I definitely want to do. And then last thing here on the bullet journal is my other thing that I update every day is I have. And this is a new thing for me. I've never done this for my past bullet journals, but I wanted to do it this year because I thought it could be kind of fun, because I want to be more consistent with my reading. And so I have a reading log. It's on this page here. And so this is what it looks like. But it's basically, there's a little box for every single day of the year. And then I have a key up in the corner here. Hopefully you can see that right here. It's backwards. The key here. And that basically, it's kind of like, I don't know if you guys have seen like a mood blanket or like a temperature blanket. My sister is super into crochet, and so she's done this in the past where she's done a temperature blanket. So she has a key where it's different colors for different temperatures, and she'll literally crochet a little square of the blanket based on the temperature of that specific day, like the highs and lows of that day. And then eventually, obviously, at the end, you have an entire blanket. So it's kind of like that, but for reading and on paper and not crocheting. But yeah, so I have my colored pencils, and I have a key for like if I didn't read, if I read 0 to 15 minutes, if I read 15 to 30 minutes, if I read 30 to 45 minutes, 45 minutes to an hour, and then 1 hour plus. So this is what it's looking like right now. Obviously, January and February were not super consistent, but I have been very consistent in March, April, and so far May. And basically my rule for myself is I just have to read a little bit, because obviously that's why I have the section 0 to 15 minutes. And so even if I'm really tired, I will get in bed and I will read at least one page of a book, because reading is so important to me. I think it's something that is so good for you. And yeah, so I want to be constantly reading, and I would rather, and this is still something I'm working on, but I would rather always be reading before bed than being on my phone. So that's why I try to always, like, I'll get in bed and I will read at least a page. And obviously sometimes I'll read more than that, but I want to read at least a page. So that's that. And then the other page here is basically going to be my dictionary for the year. So I really love words, and so I just have this page where if I hear a word, if I read a word, whether I know it or not, if I like it, or if it's something that's kind of outside a normal vocabulary for me, I will write it down. So for example, I have caprice, consternation, compunction, despotic, insolence, ancillary. Those are just a couple of them. But yeah, so that's my other page of just updating those, which I am a little bit behind because I know there's some that I needed to write down from the books that I've finished currently. But yeah. So that's my bullet journal. Just kind of wanted to give you guys a little rundown of that, because that's super fun and I love doing that every month. Sometimes, again, I get a little bit behind, but but yeah. Yes, exactly. It actually happened yesterday. The pastor that was preaching, he said the word sanguine multiple times in his preaching. And I turned to one of my friends and I was like, what percentage of the room do you think knows what sanguine means? But the thing about me is that I can't always necessarily tell you the definition. Like, I'm not a dictionary. I can't just, I hear a word and I'm like, oh yeah, this is exactly what it means. But most of the time I feel like I can use it in a sentence, or I can use the context to figure out what it means. So, and I think that's part of the reason, or what am I trying to say? I think part of the reason why I'm able to do that is because of how much I read. Because there's times where I'll read a word that I don't know the definition to, but because of the context, I'm able to use my critical thinking skills and my reading comprehension to kind of figure out what it means, and then I can look it up later, or sometimes I look it up in the moment. But yeah, I think that's just a skill that I have picked up and learned from reading. So again, another reason to start reading more, because it helps expand your vocabulary. Okay. I feel like there was something else that I was gonna say or tell you guys about, but now I don't remember, which is unfortunate because I feel like it was good. But alas. So with all that being said, I am going to dive right in to my next book. So I'm going to pop up my little reading stream. Perfect. So here is the book that I'm going to be starting today. It is called The Chalet Next Door, and the author, Cassandra Joelle, has graciously allowed me to read her book out loud on stream, and I'm super excited. So I am just going to give you guys a little bit of context first, and then we will dive right in. So I found Cassandra on Instagram. She popped up on my Instagram feed, and she is a Christian no spice author, which I am trying to find more of those in my life. And so I reached out to her and asked her if I could read one of her books on stream, and she graciously sent me the ebook file for this one, because I told her this was the one that I wanted to read. She let me know. She was like, whichever book you would like to read, I can send you the ebook. So I read through her website. And I'll link it in the description once I am done streaming and the stream is posted. But her website is just her name, CassandraJoelle.com. So you can find information about her short stories, her novels, all that kind of stuff. But I read through all of the descriptions, and this was the one that stood out to me. So I'm really excited. So I'm actually going to pull up the synopsis on her website and read it to you guys, just so you kind of know what we're getting into here. So, the chalet next door. Blizzard outside, banter inside, sparks inevitable. Bubbly book publisher Presley Astor has been told all her life she's too much, but she's perfectly happy being herself and taking her pampered Shih Tzu Priscilla on a solo ski trip to Sage Mountain, Wyoming. What she's not prepared for is a blizzard knocking out her power and forcing her to seek refuge in the chalet next door, with a brooding cowboy who clearly doesn't know what to do with someone like her. Ford Prescott is a guarded ski joring champion, a rodeo sport where a horse pulls a skier at breakneck speeds, preparing for the biggest race of his life. But he's also fighting cheating competitors and a faith that's quietly slipping through his fingers. As snow piles high and the town shuts down, Presley's joy and Priscilla's undeniable charm begins melting Ford's walls. But when old insecurities and misunderstandings hit harder than the storm, they'll have to decide if God's plan for them is bigger than just surviving the blizzard. Doesn't that sound amazing? Oh my gosh, I'm actually so excited. Okay, so all of her books honestly sound really good, but this one stood out to me because I am actually somebody that has felt that you're too much thing in my life. And so like literally that being the first line of the synopsis, I was like, okay, I'm going to be able to relate to this character, I have a feeling. Yeah, just love the setting, love the cozy mountain vibes, which it's actually so funny. I don't know if you guys can tell, but my sweater, I did this completely unintentionally. This is just the sweater I throw on when it's cold in the morning and I just want something cozy. But I literally just bought this at Old Navy for like $9. It was in the clearance section, but it's like basically a mountainscape. So I feel like it's very fitting for this, for starting this book, which is so funny. But, anyways, also, if you ever see me leaning over here like this, I'm trying to figure out how to do like clip markers and stream markers, and I still haven't figured it out. Like, I have my hotkeys set up in Streamlabs because that's what I use to stream, but I can't figure out how to like connect it to Twitch and get that. I don't know what's happening. So anyways, if y'all want to help me out, I think I have the setting where you can, my like followers or people that are viewing it can like create clips and stuff too. I don't know if you guys can do clip markers, but anyways, if you guys have any tips or tricks or how to figure out how to do that, let me know because I need help. But that's what I'm trying to do over here is like use my hotkeys. So if you ever see me leaning over here and hear a click or whatever, that's what I'm doing. But again, I digress a lot. Which, you know what? Since we were on the topic of words, I'm going to look up. Because I feel like I know what it means. Yes, okay, great. Digress. Leave the main subject temporarily in speech or writing. Amazing. I feel as though I digress a lot. I'm not going to say too much because that's part of the point of this stream. But anyways, okay. I think we're gonna get started now, ladies and gentlemen. So, yes. Again, if you guys are new, welcome in. If you're returning, welcome back. Always feel free to comment in the chat. Say hi. I will do my best to be glancing over and responding to you guys, chatting to you guys, all the different things, but especially since I'm reading out loud, it's a little bit more, focus driven. So I will do my best. Oh my gosh. Wow. I need to relax. I'll do my best, but okay. After 30 minutes of intro, we're going to dive into The Chalet Next Door by Cassandra Joelle, an all ski, no spice Christian rom-com. Okay. The dedication. Dedicated to my ski joring champion and husband, Chad, who helped guide this story towards the finish line. Oh, that's so cute. Okay. Okay, also, sorry. One more thing. I'm going to close my window really quick. was a lot of activity happening outside. I wish it was my family. Man, I miss my sisters. It's just I live in an apartment complex, so my neighbors are out and about walking around, which, that's life, so it happens. But I closed my window, so hopefully that helps a little bit. It'll also probably help with just the general noise, because I'm not too far from a freeway, so there's always, birds and cars and all the different things. But anyways, okay, let me take a drink of water. Okay, here we go. Chapter 1, Presley. All roads lead to Sage Mountain. A big storm is expected tonight to hit Sage Mountain ski area. Forecasters are saying up to 18 inches of powder, just in time for the winter games. The radio alerting me of the upcoming forecast was good news, as I was not trekking these snow-covered roads for poor skiing conditions. Did you hear that, Priscilla? Mom is going to ski powder. My Shih Tzu didn't seem to care about the upcoming fresh snow. She was all curled up on the passenger seat in her cozy donut bed, atop a heating pad and wearing her cute lime green sweater. I switched the radio station back to the Christian music channel. As I drove around a bend, majestic mountains came into view. Girls trip, Priscilla! Isn't this fun? She didn't even look up at me this time, perfectly nestled in her warm seat. Just me, Jesus, and my Shih Tzu, I laughed, clasping the silver cross necklace I wore. No man can say I'm too much when it's just me and my doggy. I sighed, remembering just yesterday when I booked this last-minute trip to recharge my internal batteries, but I'd often felt silly about going somewhere alone. I didn't need a man to be happy or complete. I just needed my relationship with God. And besides, Priscilla made the perfect travel companion. I shot another glance at her, and now her back was to me. The song playing was a familiar ballad I'd heard in church, as I tried to sing along but missed all the beats and lyrics. Priscilla was looking at me again, no doubt judging my terrible voice. I turned it up a notch to drown out my singing right as it ended. Next up, we have a rendition of Hallelujah from one of our local singers right here in Sage Mountain, Wyoming. But before we play it, we have a word from our sponsors about the Winter Games. In the last 30 minutes, I'd heard more about the Winter Games than I had about the snowstorm that was supposedly going to hit us. You do not want to miss Sage Mountain's Winter Games, hosted by Sage Mountain's Olympic gold medalist ski jumper Theo McCain. The annual ski joring competition at this year's event will have reigning champion Ford. The radio cut out as I drove through a dead spot. I turned it off, seeing as I was only 15 minutes away from the resort, according to my built-in GPS in my Yukon. As I drove the winding roads in silence, my mind immediately went back to the anxieties at work. Since becoming a book publisher in Denver, I'd had several highly sought-after novels published under my imprint. With waking up every day to a freshly full inbox of new submissions, my life consisted of reading. I read while I brushed my teeth, while I cooked dinner. I no longer had time to watch television or listen to music, as my phone could read the submissions to me while driving. I reached a breaking point yesterday around 9 in the morning when my cup of coffee spilled on my blouse, as I was already late for work in epic proportions from oversleeping. I stayed up too late the night before reading manuscript submissions. Once the coffee touched my white silk blouse, I discovered I was burnt out. While I was incredibly thankful for the success to which God had made possible at my young age of 26, I had almost no time to myself. I'd begun to lose my identity and forget the things I enjoyed. I lived in Denver, Colorado, just a few hours from some of the greatest skiing in the Rockies, and I couldn't remember the last time I skied. Or had my phone off. Not checking my email for an hour felt like a rebellion, until now. Yesterday, I may have had a bit of a meltdown. Some might have considered it a nervous breakdown, but thankfully, Priscilla was my only witness. And now I was driving to a luxury chalet at the base of a hopping ski resort, Sage Mountain, Wyoming. I'd be merely steps to a brand new gondola installed last year, having almost an entire week of relaxation and time away from my team, who were more than capable of handling things. I just needed to give them the opportunity to do so, right? According to my therapist, my long singledom had created even more of a powerhouse woman out of me. While men I had met in the last few years had generally thought of me as too busy or too successful, too this or too that, I'd overcompensated in my career. It was a classic chicken and the egg scenario. Was I always this driven to take over the world of publishing, or did men rejecting me make me this way? I graduated college on a fast track, finishing my degree in 3 years instead of 4. When I signed on at a publishing firm, only a year had passed before they let me have my own imprint, where I was publishing Christian books and novels written by and for readers in my same age group. At times, or most of the time, it was a lot of pressure to keep up, but I was doing everything I could to stay above water. However, with the agony of my dating experiences, things had felt more strained, until recently. The Lord had freed me of those past hurts. I didn't want to hand over the reins and let people take things off my plate. That's why, yesterday, after arriving at work on Monday morning in my still-stained blouse, I promoted my assistant, Jenny, to stand in for me while I was away. Once she got over her deer in headlights expression, I thought she accepted the task. I wasn't really sure. I was already out the door. Truthfully, I was a little nervous how things would be without me there for an entire week. We had a pretty big launch planned for a new devotional book geared towards single women. I admitted I had a bias for the material matter, but I took a deep breath and I trusted that Jenny could handle things. As she had been by my side for 3 years, we'd practically built it together. As I approached the resort, the snow piled high on surrounding rooftops and pine trees was a feast for my eyes. It was as if everything had been sprinkled in sparkling powdered sugar. Smoke was curling from chimneys, and a chill came over me from excitement. The vacation rental listing mentioned it was close to Main Street, I said aloud, not that Priscilla cared. As I traversed the main drag, I was charmed by the twinkling lights adorning every tree, light pole, and building, and the beautiful ice skating rink in the center of town. I imagined going there for an evening and sliding around on the glassy ice. The thought brought warmth to my soul. "Priscilla, there's a pet store!" I excitedly exclaimed as the Possum Pooch store came and went. "I bet a sweater from there would cost me a good chunk of my salary," I mumbled, smiling and rolling my eyes at the thought of how Priscilla liked expensive things. She seemed to know the difference between wool and acrylic. A large, flashing digital billboard advertising the Winter Games flashed a photo of a handsome cowboy and then showed a promo photo of him ski-joring with a cowboy hat. "Hello, cowboy," I mumbled, making my last turn before the chalet. "They just make them different here in Wyoming," I giggled, reminiscing about that cowboy's rugged jawline. "You have arrived at your destination," my GPS screamed into the abyss of silence in my car. I yelped back out of fright, as I was deep in thought, contemplating cowboys at a ski resort, which further annoyed Priscilla for interrupting her beauty sleep. The luxury chalet row was incredible, just off the main road for the resort in a line of many individual chalets, all managed by the same company. A fleeting thought of wonder passed my mind for who owned them. I pulled up my Yukon to the chalet that I reserved, with a large 2 hanging on the downstairs door. The smell of pine trees was intoxicating. I could practically hear the crackling of logs in the fire. I left my skis outside the front door in a snow mound, grabbed my bags and ski boots, and after a quick potty break for Priscilla outside, I punched in the code for the front door and was greeted by a stunning floor plan. Light hardwood floors, tan wood beams on the ceiling, and a grand chandelier hanging over the extra plush sectional couch. A beautiful off-white kitchen with glistening granite countertops had all gold finishes and hardware. Floor-to-ceiling windows gave the most remarkable view of a snowy pine tree forest, with a hint of Sage Mountain's chairlifts in the distance. The corners of the windows were delicately frosted from the cold. It was like living in a snow globe in the dreamiest winter wonderland. I kicked off my shoes. As Priscilla started roaming around, I wondered why I hadn't thought of this sooner. An hour later, following a mad case of the zoomies, Priscilla was snoring in her bed in front of the gas fireplace. She was bouncing off the walls just moments ago, which was adorable to watch. We even played fetch for a bit, though she found running around the coffee table more interesting than her toys I brought from home. I had a fresh mug of hot cocoa, the real kind made with milk and chocolate, and it was divine, while I clicked on the television to see another weather report. Also, hot cocoa is a goated drink. I love it when it becomes fall and winter because... oh my gosh, sitting on a couch, curled up with a book, a blanket, and a cup of hot cocoa. Honestly, one of the best things ever. Record-breaking snowfall expected at Sage Mountain Resort this weekend, but unless you POW chasers are already there, your luck may be up, as the highway is expected to close down. Snowplow crews are already running an overdrive as they gear up for the Winter Games, so don't expect a fast turnaround on opening back up either. I turned it back off. Good thing I brought groceries for the week, though now that I was there, my appetite was craving way more carbs than I came prepared for. It was still early, not yet dark, and the snow hadn't started yet. I decided a last-minute trip to the store for supplies was a good idea. Jumping up from the couch, Priscilla got her second win for the day, looking at me as if to ask, "Where are we going?" I checked the mirror. Just because I was happy in my singledom didn't mean I wanted to look ragged in public, right? My brown hair was shiny, thanks to my last-minute appointment for a blowout yesterday. My green eyes popped with this moody taupe eyeshadow, and the cheeks were naturally flushed because of the warm cocoa. My outfit, a 2-piece tan jogger set, was okay, but not really giving ski holiday. Priscilla looked more the part than I did in her cute green sweater with white snowflakes embroidered on it. I decided a quick outfit change into a beige turtleneck sweater, dark jeans, and snow boots could be much cuter. I put a black headband in my hair, pushing the hair out of my face. It worked. I felt cute, and that was enough for me. As Priscilla and I walked to the car, off in the distance I saw a man walking a horse into a barn. The sight seemed unusual for the area, but I realized it must have been part of the ski-joring that I had heard so much about on the way up there. I smirked. After all of the ads I heard, I felt like an expert on the matter. The first snowflake fell on my windshield as I got back out onto the road. The coziness of the incoming storm was exciting me to no end. Pushing the cart around Natural Grocers with Priscilla in the child seat, we made several bad decisions. The first of which we hit the ice cream aisle. Then we got some bacon to sizzle up in the morning, mostly because I wanted her to have a treat too, since she wasn't about to have a bite of my rocky road. Next, I got a variety of ready-made food. Lastly, I stocked up on colorful pastas, fresh mozzarella, and aged Parmesan cheese. I decided to skip the garlic bread since I had ice cream. Balance. The woman at the checkout had long, bright red nails that matched her sweater. She was chewing gum at high speed, popping it every few seconds. Her nails clicking on every packaged item that she scanned was entertaining. "And how are you girls doing tonight?" she asked, gum popping erratically, beaming at me in between. "We're good, preparing for the storm. And you?" "Oh yeah, you and everyone else getting ready for the weather. It's no carb left behind around here. If there's a single box left of mac and cheese at the end of my shift, it will be a miracle." She winked, and I considered just how good macaroni sounded. As we left the store, the flakes started falling faster. By the time we got back to the chalet, it was nearly pitch black and a full-blown blizzard. Priscilla wasn't happy about her last potty outside for the evening, as the snow was up to her chest, but thankfully I brought her snow booties and heavy winter coat that protected her fur from getting wet. Back in the chalet, Priscilla and I each ate our dinner, hers of the finest quality, refrigerated dog food that looks like human-grade eats, and mine a lovely chicken carbonara pasta for one. In my coziest plush pajamas, we made our way to the bedroom, where normally I would read for a few hours in my winding down time, but no reading on this trip, unless it was the Bible, which I enjoyed for 30 minutes before turning off the lights and falling asleep. I awoke to a freezing house. Priscilla was pressed up against me under the covers, body burrowed into the blankets. Slipping on a pair of thick socks and a heavy robe that was left for me next to the soaking tub, I went downstairs to investigate. Finding the thermostat, I cranked it up to a toasty 70 degrees. I also turned on the gas fireplace to warm up the chalet faster as I walked past the wood-burning stove. I opened the latch, no wood inside, or I'd have lit that too. I remembered seeing a stack of wood outside by the driveway. It was barely past dawn. I went back to bed, the warmth rising to the loft quickly. We slept for 2 hours. I never slept in at home, with work being... we slept for 2 more hours. I never slept in at home, with work being early and running late into the evening with books I brought home. I never realized how hard on my sleeping pattern that was. The stacks of manuscripts that surrounded me were always looming over my head. Since I'd been free of them for 24 hours, I felt their power waning. They could wait. This trip was about me. Getting out of bed, I slipped my feet into the Sherpa slippers that I kicked off last night next to the king-size beauty sleep machine. Doing a few stretches, I felt great. The mattress was an upgrade to mine at home, and I considered slipping off the sheets to see what the make was, when I felt another chill in the air. Throwing on my robe and tightening it, I reached for Priscilla, who let out a groan. "Time to get up, sleepyhead," I said in a coo, but it didn't work, as she let out the faintest growl when I went to move her. "Okay, up, Priscilla." That worked, as she did know that command. "Let's go potty outside. After that, you can sleep all day if you want, because Mommy's going skiing." I looked out the window and felt the excitement in my bones. The snowstorm came through, and it absolutely dumped overnight. The walk from the chalet to the new gondola was as advertised, less than 100 yards. In my barely worn black ski pants that made a delightful swoosh with every step I took, black turtleneck, and fitted white ski jacket, I felt cool, stylish, sleek. I was glad for it, as carrying my skis over my shoulder became cumbersome after about 3 steps. The lines were miraculously short as I raced to ride the new gondola at the base of Sage Mountain. Peering over to the other chairlifts, the crowds were easily 2 to 3 times in size. Looking at the base maps, I realized why. This gondola went to easier runs, whereas the lifts went to more challenging peaks, for which I was more than pleased with. I was a good skier, but I enjoyed wide, groomed trails. I wasn't trying to overdo anything on my first trip skiing in years. The singles line meant that I got to cut even more people, since I didn't care about riding with a particular group. I was on the second gondola of the morning, and the ride up was filled with chatter, excitement, and peering out the window as we crossed a deep canyon filled with snowy trees and off-piste trails. 6 people in total were in the gondola, and I was sitting directly across from a man, but I couldn't see anything definitive about his appearance. His goggles were down, and he was in head-to-toe black, other than a tiger face mask. The gondola slowed, as it usually did if someone needed extra time at the top, and the slightest movement of his hand revealed the skin on his wrist. In certain cultures, showing skin on wrists would be considered scandalous. I smirked at the thought and was about to be bold enough to ask him about the mask when I was interrupted by someone in the gondola pointing out a moose. "Look, right there! There's a huge mama moose," one woman said. "I hope I don't run into her or her babies while I'm skiing," another woman said with an undertone of fear in her voice. I hadn't thought of that possibility, and too, I felt worried. "Just stay on the trails and you'll be fine. No off-roading, okay?" The man next to her put his arm around her for reassurance. She nodded. "Are you watching the Winter Games this weekend?" a man asked the couple in front of them, as they still kept their gaze on the tall, overpowering animal. "Just the ski joring," the man said, taking his arm back from around the woman's shoulders as we neared the top. "I have never seen it before, and I'm from a rodeo town, but we never get enough snow to do anything remotely as cool." "Yeah, same. That Ford Prescott is something else." The conversationalist next to me let out a low whistle after he spoke, emphasizing on Ford's name. "And he's not bad to look at, either," the woman next to me spoke out, and the other woman laughed in agreement, her partner giving her a look. "What? I'm married, but I'm not dead," she smirked. "Ford Prescott. Was that the handsome cowboy I saw on the billboard with a steely jaw, chin dimple, and yesterday's stubble? Maybe I would have to watch the games after all. When we reached the top, I felt my ears pop with the change in elevation. I was the first to get out, and since the gondola never stops moving, I felt the pressure of retrieving my skis from their holder as quickly as possible, as I skirted around it in my ski boots. A small ice patch nearly took me down in the process, but I caught myself and walked out of the way so I could put them on and analyze my route. Once I was out and in place where everyone put their skis on, the man in the tiger mask flew past me on his powder skis. He was a very good skier, which was obvious. Standing below the map was an older ski host, armed with a solo ski pole as his pointer, so he could advise people on which runs to take. He was at least a decade older than me, if not more, and I wasn't even done putting on my skis yet when he struck up a conversation. "Good morning. What kind of adventure are you seeking today?" His blue eyes sparkled as he spoke. There was a softness to him, a dad vibe that I found endearing. "A mid-level adventure, at least to start. I'm afraid the number of years I've been off skis are rivaling the years I have," I said as I clicked into my skis, putting my poles under my arm and taking in the map. The options of ski runs were endless, with everything from family learning zones to triple blacks. I decided to be a little more specific. I like to stick to groomers if possible. I'm over the age of awareness. I'm not trying to ski moguls if I can help it. He let out a laugh, nodding. "Of course. I'm well past my mogul years, too. How about this route?" He pointed to a blue run that broke off into every which way. Start out on Shadow Dancer, then turn right into Gimmicks, keep right as the trails merge with Potato Chip, and then it's imperative you take the cat track right here. That will be immediately to your left, called Snickering Kitty, and you take that run for just a moment before it opens up to the best blue groomer we have, all the way back here. Otherwise, you'll be heading for a double black mogul field called Blackbeard's Revenge. Blackbeard's Revenge. Shadow, Potato Chip, Kitty? I mumbled, my head scrambling to remember the route. Seriously, who names these runs? "Have fun," he exclaimed before moving down the map to help another group of skiers who were scratching their heads at the map. "Shadow, Potato Chip, Kitty." I said it 3 more times as I pulled my goggles over my helmet, tightening everything in the back. The faintest clouds were in the sky as I looked over to the starting point, where the mountains sloped off just so. Taking a huge gulp of fresh alpine air, I felt rejuvenated, free, alive. Thank you, Lord, for bringing me here. I pray for a fun time, safety, and only groomed runs. Smiling, I took off on Shadow Dancer, slowly making a few wide turns before finding my ski legs and tightening my pattern in a freshly laid snow that sparkled in the sunlight. By the time I got to my first crossroads, I had forgotten the words I'd been repeating. I slowed, stopping in a fluid movement and spraying snow in the process. "Hockey puck, gimmicks, or ruffles," I read the signs aloud, 2 of which were blue and the other, ruffles, was snow-covered, so I couldn't see its rating. One was left, one was straight, and the other was right. I couldn't for the life of me recall anything other than Potato Chip and Kitty. "Oh, Potato Chip. Maybe he was speaking in code," I said, shaking my head as I headed straight down on Ruffles. What could go wrong? Oh gosh. At the end of the run, that I had to take in full-blown pizza formation, my legs were so wide it looked like I was playing a schoolyard game of London Bridge. My limbs felt like gelatin. I was sore and tired as I dodged the moguls and did everything I could to keep control of my turns with a steep grade I wasn't ready for. I wasn't certain, but I had a feeling that it was the wrong run. I managed to find a moderate cat track that looped down quite a bit of the mountain before reaching a cluster of blue runs and successfully avoiding mogul fields. I ended up going back up the gondola 3 more times as I couldn't get enough of the amazing conditions. My turns down the mountain powder felt like frosting in a wedding cake. In the morning, its softness made it easier to warm up, and by midday the snow had formed an upper crust from the cold that made my turns feel sharper with better execution. If it wasn't for my bladder, my stomach, and my muscles alerting me that it was enough for the day, I would have stayed out there until the last chair. Getting back to the chalet, Priscilla was thrilled to see me. It appeared her energy levels from being cooped up inside were finally recovering from her lazy day yesterday, and she was ready for some serious playtime. If we were home, I would have taken her out to our covered dog area at the condos, but since we were here and there was 1.5 feet of snow outside, I ended up throwing a toy for her to fetch for nearly 15 minutes before she had her fill. We ended the day with a nice dinner consisting of a few things I picked up at the grocery store, including Sage Mountain's highest quality macaroni pasta from a local pasta maker and a cup of tea, before my eyes slammed shut in the cozy king bed upstairs, where I had the most restful sleep of my life. Waking early the next morning, Priscilla too seemed extra rested. Having the zoomies as we traipsed downstairs to fill her food dish, she excitedly ate while I showered and dressed for another day on the slopes. I decided to warm up for the day with a nice cup of hot chocolate. After starting my mug of milk in the microwave, the power surged, going out. "Oh no," I said, with Priscilla even feeling that something wasn't right about that. When it came back on 10 seconds later, I restarted the microwave. Hope that doesn't happen again. Subtle foreshadowing! I was stirring the chocolate into my hot milk, already forgetting it would... Excuse me. I was stirring the chocolate into my hot milk, already forgetting it when it happened a second time. But unlike the first, the power didn't immediately come back on. I traipsed over to my purse, digging for my phone. Service was extremely limited out here, and I'd had it turned off to not be distracted by it, but it appeared I'd forgotten to plug it in because it was completely dead. That's okay, I told myself. Don't panic. I looked out the windows, turns towards town. Plenty of lights were on in the community, as the sun was just rising and I could see clearly. It wasn't like an EMP or something. Gah, I'd read one too many apocalypse novels to be dealing with this alone at the moment. Don't let the intrusive thoughts win, Presley. But the lights from Sage Mountain were comforting, and I saw the chairlifts in the distance, a reminder I was at a heavily populated resort that very likely had generators. It was quite possible it was just my chalet that lost electricity. However, I had no phone, no power, no Wi-Fi, and no way of getting help. Unless, of course, I went out into the freezing temps and found it. As I looked back outside, I saw the snow was falling once again. After several minutes of wrestling with what to do, I decided I would wait it out. I had a wood-burning stove, after all. Ready to eat food in the fridge, the only thing that absolutely required electricity was my charger. All I needed was wood. Besides, Priscilla needed to go for a potty break anyway. Someone had been by to shovel the walks in the driveway this morning around my car, or the walks were heated, which made more sense. This place was fancy like that. It was safe, and everything was perfectly accessible. So we bundled up, her in her pink puffer jacket with little rhinestone accents, and her snow boots that she absolutely despised, and me in my white ski jacket. I was wearing my ski clothes already, except for shoes, so I threw on some snow boots. Holding Priscilla's leash, I let her extend it as far as she needed to go, while I headed for the woodpile, letting the door shut behind me. I grabbed as many logs as I could comfortably hold and waited for Priscilla to sniff every part of the earth. When she was done, we walked back to the front door. Entering the code, the buttons made no noise. I hit enter, but nothing happened. What? Is this door somehow hardwired into the electricity? I tried it 3 more times. A cold wind shifted in my direction. My knees started to tremble. Dropping the wood, I picked up Priscilla, who was also shivering. I'm sorry, sweetie. It appears we're locked out. Ugh, it must have been connected to Wi-Fi. How did I not consider that before going out there? It was eerily reminiscent of how every episode of Dateline starts. The narrator's voice boomed in my head. Presley Astor thought it was just like every other ski trip. She was wrong. Now what? I looked around at the row of chalets as I considered my options. Priscilla's inner monologue. Splendid. We've been cast into the cold. Just try not to trip as you carry me through the snow, darling. I love that. Okay, that was the end of chapter 1. I'm liking it so far. There's definitely been a couple spots where the writing style or the sentence structure has tripped me up a little bit. Nothing bad, but part of it might be my own brain, but anyways, okay. Chapter 2, Ford. So at least right now, it's looking like it's going to be a dual perspective, so it'll go back and forth between the characters. So chapter 2, Ford. Blizzard prep and bad press. The last 5 reps were the hardest of the set. It took everything I had in me to put the barbell back on its rack as I finished up my bench presses. I was covered in sweat and reaching for my towel as my phone started to ring again. Checking the caller ID, I sent it to voicemail without another thought. The 3rd bedroom in my chalet made for a perfect gym. A few weight racks, a bench, and a treadmill kept me strong. Being raised on a cattle ranch and coming from a long line of strong, stocky men, I noticed from a young age that I had greater natural strength than most of my peers. Though I was far from a ranch life now, I couldn't just sit idly. I needed to move and work my muscles. For ski joring, while your body has to be strong to maintain control as you whip around the turns of the track, the biggest strength comes from your arms and hands. The ability to maintain the rope hold is crucial, but you have to be able to work the rope, knowing when to give slack and adjust angles as you make your way around the track at breakneck speeds. Not once did I ever consider that the sport would have taken me this far. Everything I had was from ski joring prize money, brand partnerships, and collaborations. I started ski joring when I was 9 years old. Me and a few other ranch kids in the area would go to empty campgrounds in the winter where we'd build a track and jumps. Friends of their families would bring horses or snowmobiles to pull us around, while most of the adults just enjoyed the bonfire and socializing. Often, I'd ask whoever was pulling me to go as fast as the horse or machine could go in the conditions so I could practice. The other kids couldn't keep up with me. When I started entering the Pee-wee divisions at the local rodeo circuits and winning, I kept up with it. Now, I've traveled all over the Rockies for ski touring. My manager even got me a short trip to Europe a few years ago. I could have kept going like this for the foreseeable future and had a great time. But I had a secret. At the end of that month, my manager's contract was up. We renewed it every 2 years, and he had no reason to think this year would be any different, except it was in every way. I had my eyes set on another goal, retiring from the sport. Since my fiancé ended things with me last year, after revealing she'd been having an emotional affair with the CEO's... Oh, my gosh. Sorry, let me restart that. Since my fiance ended things with me last year after revealing she'd been having an emotional affair with the CEO of Sage Mountain Ski Resort, Trent Langley, I'd trudged on. I didn't let it break me. Poppy and I had been together for 12 months, engaged after only 10 weeks of dating. The engagement was as much her idea as it was my manager's. The family man image got more deals these days than heartthrob, his words exactly. Truthfully, I didn't need much nudging. Poppy was everything to me. I put her on a pedestal, weaving in and out of the red flags she casually put out, like a slalom race course. And there were many. Still, I believed she was the one that God had sent in my path. Now, I had been having a really hard time connecting to God when I did everything I could to force his hand by getting in a relationship with a woman like that, and it only caused me to crash and burn. The hardest part? The dog that Poppy talked me into getting during our engagement. She took it when we broke up. My heart was broken twice, losing both my fiancé and my little buddy, an Australian shepherd named Toby. Sure, Wyoming ranchers are built differently from your average city folk, but all the strength in the world didn't prepare me for the feelings I was dealing with now, like betrayal and losing my dog. On top of it all, I felt like I was losing my spiritual strength. Every time I tried to talk to God about my feelings, I hit a wall. I was drowning in regret, embarrassment, shame. I wanted God to cleanse me of these feelings, but I just felt so wounded. Honestly, I was ready to move on. I was ready to let go. But with that dark cloud looming over my sport, and words traveling faster than a lubed-up inner tube on a black diamond, I felt I'd guarded my heart and mind once again. This time, I wouldn't be so quick to let anyone break through those walls. My favorite thing about my new chalet here in Sage Mountain, other than its proximity to a great horse boarding facility that had a large barn for my horses, was that no one except my manager knew exactly where I was. Of course, it was known that I had a home here and was based at this resort over winters. Heck, it was listed on my Wikipedia page that I was here. After my breakup with Poppy, I sold my home and had this one built on land I'd bought years ago. And with all the chalets around me being short-term rentals, often full of families just trying to get their kids' energy out on the slopes, I had managed to lay low so far. If someone was knocking on my door, it was a food delivery service, and not someone who needed to speak with me. My phone buzzed again. I wish the same could be said about my phone number. I quickly hit ignore. My other favorite amenity about this chalet was the hundreds of ski trails just out my front door. The new gondola installed enabled me to take runs at my fancy without standing in line with most of the general public, who still favored the other chairs. But I didn't have as much time for skiing that season as I'd had liked. With the cheating scandal that was plaguing my sport, and without knowing explicitly who had been involved, I opted to lay low that year, trading in my downhill recreational skis for my steady slalom racers I trained on. Besides, I got too much attention last year when it was revealed that Poppy left me for Trent Langley, and every once in a while people still wanted to ask me questions about it. Now, with the cheating scandal, I was afraid they might have asked more questions about the professional kind of cheating I may have witnessed, and I didn't think my mind could take it. I couldn't point a finger at my fellow competitors, my friends. Besides, I'd never even seen anything suspicious. So, if I was out in the snow on skis at all, I was at the training track. At least there, we had a strict athlete-only policy, and no press was allowed in. There, I was free from the questions and could focus on improving my speeds. After a shower, I threw on some jeans and a thermal long-sleeve shirt. I had to go down to feed the horses later, but until then, I wanted to get to the bottom of that rumor. If half the talk was true, riders were throwing races so that another competitor could win. First things first, I needed to talk to my manager. Ford, just the man the world is wanting to hear from. What do I owe the pleasure? My manager, Jack, always in the air for the dramatics, answered the phone. Good morning, Jack. I'm seeing a lot of things in the news, and I just want to keep my name clear. I haven't bribed any of the riders to throw the races to get where I am. I just want to make that known. Relax, cowboy. So far, no one is associating any cheating to us, Ford. Unfortunately, I can't say that we don't know anyone who is. Remember your pal Bo Perry? That's another story. He was seen chatting very closely with another competitor who just so happened to very awkwardly lose their race. I squeezed the bridge of my nose as Jack told me the news. Bo was more than a fellow racer to me there in Sage Mountain. He was a friend. Last year, he boarded one of his horses with mine. The thought of him cheating was shattering. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But I sure hope he hasn't been involved in this scandal this whole time. Heck, he nearly whooped me on that last race of ours. If it wasn't for him wearing the extra-wide slalom skis that didn't let him turn fast enough, I think he would have broken a world record. I started over-analyzing the memories of the race to make sure I had thought it through. Nothing was out of the ordinary that I could remember. That's my man. Ford, you're the first to not throw a stone. I admire you for that. I wish I could say the same about some of the other athletes that didn't make the Winter Games, like Jace Kelly. Looks like his social media team has been hired by a prosecutor for Bo Perry. Not a single second spared throwing him under the bus. Grimacing at the thought, I was reminded that some athletes had an inability to keep to themselves. But at the same time, it did feel like a betrayal to learn that someone you competed against maybe wasn't playing fair. We'll never know for Bo. It seems he's decided to take a leave of absence from the sport. Probably got a retirement announcement before too long from him. He was already having knee problems after all. I wished I knew what Jack thought of that, since it was exactly what I was planning to do too. Thanks, Jack, for the information. Bo is a friend, and I wish him well, I mumbled. Either way, this problem isn't ours. Our association is long overdue for setting regulations for things like this, and sometimes it's the unfortunate circumstances like these that force their hand to do so, Jack said. Hey, I better get going. There's some catastrophic storm hitting the mountain tonight, and I need to get my horses situated. I did see the numbers for the storm. Should be a great weekend with all that fresh powder. I can't wait to see you race, Ford. If only I could go out and ski it without being questioned by every reporter known to man. It will be, and they're going to be working around the clock to groom the racetrack for our competition. I peered out the window at the training arena not too far off. The best thing for me was to keep my head out of the drama and focus on the game. Don't talk to any reporters. I think it's best that we keep your name out of the paper, lest they come sniffing you out and distracting you during your training. I know you have nothing to hide, Ford. Let's just stay focused and keep anything associated with your name as the driver to buy tickets, not to investigate. This will die down. Sadly, while it seems a huge deal to us, there's nothing anyone can do about past allegations. Only the current suspicions, and right now, everyone is behaving like a perfect angel. It will blow over before the games. I mean it. I agree. And if I wanted my name in the paper, I would buy the entire front page of the New York Times. We hung up, and I felt relieved to not be associated with any more drama than I already was. The day went by as expected. Giant storm incoming, frantic skiers trying to get there despite the roads threatening to close, and all the chalets in the row of mine were certainly booked up. I expected to start seeing guests arriving by the handfuls, but that far, only the one next to me appeared to be occupied, as I saw the car pull into the driveway. Before I could see who got out, my computer chimed. I grudgingly went to see what it was, expecting it to be a request for an interview. I was pleasantly surprised that my favorite ski brand wanted to do a partnership deal. I let out a huge sigh of relief. That was what I needed to distract me from everything else I had going on. I weighed the pros and cons, considering my upcoming retirement decision. Would agreeing to take a deal in light of what was to come of my career be misleading? I looked at the offer again. There was nothing in it regarding ski touring. In fact, it was a brand that made the best of the best powder skis. They didn't want Ford Prescott, the ski touring champion. They wanted Ford Prescott, the cowboy skier. The proposed partnership included pictures of me in skis on a snowy mountain, wearing head-to-toe denim and a cowboy hat. It was actually a really fun premise, and I decided to go for it. After I let Jack know that I was interested in the skiing partnership, I went out to my kitchen to make an afternoon pick-me-up. A strong cup of coffee. It didn't matter what time of day or night. I could slam enough caffeine to power a freight train and still sleep soundly. It was a gift that I didn't take for granted, as I loved the nice dark brew with rich, earthy tones and just a splash of raw cream. It was how we used to drink coffee on the ranch in Bighorn, Wyoming, where I grew up, and there wasn't a day that went by that I didn't recall the memories fondly. Taking my brew to the window, I saw the woman who I assumed was my neighbor for the week. She was lugging bags over her shoulder and placing a pair of Stockley skis out in the snow. She has excellent taste, I thought, as I wondered where her husband was to carry all that heavy stuff in for her. Then I saw it, a fluffy beige dog in a bright green sweater, marking its territory in the white snow. From here, I couldn't quite make it out, but it appeared that the dog was wearing 2 tufts of hair on her head like pigtails. A smile crossed my face, immediately shaken off. Stay focused, Ford. I can't afford any distractions right now. Or ever, for that matter. As the clouds started to roll in, I knew I'd better get to the horses. If it wasn't for the tinted windows on my white Ram 3500 truck, it might have blended into the snow. I suppose the fact that it was covered in sand from the town of Sage Mountain. What? Sorry. My brain just shorted out for a second. If it wasn't for the tinted windows on my white Ram 3500 truck, it might have blended into the snow. I suppose the fact that it was covered in sand from the town of Sage Mountain, furiously working to prevent a tourist sliding into another car, helped my case too. After arriving at the barn and arena, I scanned my card to get into the security gate. Inside, my horses Whiskey, Buckshot, and Outlaw ran up to inspect the pockets on my jacket for carrots or horse cubes. Hold your horses, guys, I smirked at my own joke. I have plenty for everyone. All of them seemed to have a talent for the dramatics. I pulled out a bag of long carrots and started handing them out as I gave everyone a quick inspection. Who wants some fresh air? I turned to open the gate of their corral, and they quickly ran out of the doors. The only thing my horses loved more than carrots was fresh snow. They'd been like that since they were colts, curious and playful, and I bought them each based on that fact. Tonight, we're getting lots of fresh power, I told them. As they stretched their legs, not a single one acknowledging my words. Whiskey and Buckshot ran back in to get a drink from the trough, as Outlaw came back over to me to see about another carrot. Off in the distance, I saw movement at the chalets. The woman that was my neighbor was holding something under her arm like a football. I surmised it was the dog, now wearing a pink bodysuit of some kind. I looked away, an annoyed smirk forming on my lips. Tourists, I mumbled under my breath. Say what you want about them, but they are entertaining, I said to Outlaw, who couldn't care less about my words, just wanted the carrots in my hand. His velvety, wet nose tickled my skin as he gobbled up the last of them. Back home, I was seasoning a ribeye steak when I got the news alert on my phone. Somehow, the technology on my phone thought that I wanted to know when articles from every armpit of the internet mentioned my name. I glanced at it, not reading the headline, but seeing the image of my ex, Poppy, and her boyfriend, Trent. She was wearing a white veil, white dress, and he was in a tuxedo. I pushed the phone away, underestimating my own strength. It slid off the counter onto the hardwood floor, shattering the screen. A feeling of relief washed over me. If my phone was broken, I had a very good reason to ignore everyone coming my way. I powered it off, screen unreadable, and the phone went dark. I'd send Jack an email tomorrow morning that I'd be out of touch until further notice, but for that night, I'd be there, trying not to think about the fact that Poppy was married, and how that article somehow mentioned me in passing. That door had been closed for quite some time. Despite nearly a year passing since she spoke those relationship-killing words, "I'm in love with someone else," I hadn't found a reason to put myself back out there. It hadn't been because of a lack of interest, I was blessed to say. I'd had several women contact me for dating, but called me old-fashioned. I wanted to be the one who pursues the woman. Come on, somebody. In this day and age of everything being online, that was challenging, but I'd opted out of online dating or social media profiles of any kind. I wanted to lay low and let things happen naturally. A year or more ago, I would have scoffed at that thought. I did everything I could to win Poppy's attention, and she was nothing but mind games. The relationship wasn't ordained by God in the slightest. Sigh. There I went again, reliving past hurts. I considered praying, an urge that hadn't passed me in quite some time, but the moment I closed my eyes, I started thinking about the shame of my past choices once again, and I felt further from God than ever. That is the devil. Hate that. Real, though. It's very real. A long time ago, I read a verse about when we repent, God forgives our mistakes and never thinks of them again. Yet, I couldn't figure out how God could forgive me when I couldn't even forgive myself. The snowflakes started to fall steadily, and I watched them from my favorite picture window. My chalet had the best view out of the whole row. They all backed up to an aspen grove, but mine had a small creek that moose would frequent. Each chalet had some elbow room. A requirement for anywhere I live is that I not be on top of my neighbors, since I was used to living on a ranch in rural is a hard word. Rural Wyoming. No, these chalets were good, I thought. A swift knock at the door plunked me out of my gaze. My favorite thing about the 21st century is contactless grocery delivery. Sure, I miss the days when I could go into a store and shop without being recognized. These days, it went so much further. Everyone assumed that since they recognized my face or bought a sponsored product, they had untethered access to me with no boundaries required. I may be a rough and tough Wyoming-born and raised cowboy, but I also have feelings. They were just deeply recessed at the moment. I put away my bags of groceries and plucked a pint of vanilla ice cream out of the freezer to thaw for dessert. I would end the night as I always did, watching a movie that reminded me of something that brought me calm, usually an old western, and trying to avoid everything else that didn't. The next morning, I awoke to my favorite childhood pastime, an abundance of snow covering every surface with its thick, heavy powder. It looked like a blanket had been put out over the entire resort. Suddenly, my feet felt an itch to ski that I could barely ignore. The runs were going to be fantastic today. I reached for my phone to check the snow gauges before remembering it was broken, while I wrestled with the decision if I wanted to risk being recognized. I thought I could wear my helmet with the most coverage, but that wouldn't cover up my very distinct chin dimple or scar on my jaw. My black jacket that zipped up over my chin would be an option, but what if it slipped? Then it dawned on me. I had a half face gaiter with a cheesy tiger face on it that I got at a white elephant party last year. That was the perfect disguise for me to enjoy my ski day. It took me a minute to find skis that I hadn't done a product deal with, or those pairs had my name engraved on them as a gift from the company. Sorting through my garage, I found a pair of atomic skis that I got as a graduation gift nearly a decade ago. They were barely used powder skis and just what I needed for all of this fresh snow. Stepping out of my chalet, I saw my neighbor leaving a few moments before me. I held back just a second, mostly so I didn't end up in a conversation. Coincidentally, my neighbor, whom I reminded myself did not know I'd seen her, who I was, or that it was me under this mask. She and I ended up in the same bright red gondola. The second one of the day, I admired her commitment to skiing. The rest of the group was chatting eagerly, and I attempted to hold my breath when my name was brought up, lest someone realize I was sitting right there. I just sat still, not trying to get anyone's attention. As I sat across from my neighbor, I couldn't help but notice how beautiful she was. Her thick brown hair was braided on one side and poking out of her white helmet, the fleeting brightness of the sun revealing golden hues. Her goggles, pulled up on her helmet, were bright purple, which added some much-needed color on a snowy day like today, but it was her icy blue eyes that gripped me. As we reached the top, I saw her shiny lips smirking at something. If it had been just us and no other riders who definitely knew who I was, I would have asked her what was funny, but for now, I let it go. I couldn't get out of the gondola soon enough. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing her, a vision I didn't want nor need for distraction. This woman was trouble with a capital T, and I would do everything in my power to avoid her. I just needed to get through this storm and the winter games. Skiing was the adrenaline rush I didn't know I needed. As I carved through the tougher and ungroomed territory, I found a few people on the same trails with me. The clouds gave way to the most beautiful skies, and for a moment I lifted my goggles and pulled down the net gaiter and felt the warmth on my face. Two snowboarders came ripping up behind me where I was stopped mid-trail, an etiquette of being out on the slopes that you'd never want to break. So I quickly moved off to the side, hoping they didn't stop to see me or to talk. They didn't. I released my breath. Call me paranoid, but when your sport is the biggest news story on all of the major news networks, and I'd been fortunate to be considered the face of ski joring, it doesn't feel good to be constantly stopped and questioned. Especially with my ex-fiance getting married and my name being brought up in such articles. I just wanted to lay low. With a zest of joy and tired legs, I finished the day a few minutes before the last chair, and instead of taking the gondola, I skied down a back way and came out near my horses. A farm gate was the only thing keeping me from being able to ski all the way to my house from there, one that I didn't have a key to. So, after unclipping my skis and awkwardly filling the corral with hay via pitchfork in my ski boots, I made sure the horses had fresh water in their trough and walked the rest of the way home with my skis slung over my shoulder. The snowflakes were starting to ramp up again, and since I was no longer moving at high speeds as I worked my way down mountain trails, the cold caught up to me. By the time I reached my chalet, I could barely punch the numbers into my garage keypad to throw my skis inside. Okay, pausing really quick because I wanted to go back. I just wanted to mention, I haven't skied in years, and I didn't ski all that much because once I started playing basketball, I just didn't want to risk getting hurt, so I didn't ski all that often. But when I was younger, my grandparents would always take us once a year to go skiing, and I always really liked it. And I've skied a couple times as an adult, just meeting my sisters in Boise, not Boise, in Idaho, and skiing, and it's always really fun. But that's actually one of the best feelings, I think. One, just being in the mountains, but when you're up on a slope and it's cold and crisp and it's just white everywhere with a little bit of green from the trees and it's sunny and you can just sit there and you feel the sun on your face. Oh, it's one of the best feelings ever. Okay. Peeling off a few layers of my ski clothes, I left my black Henley undershirt and ski pants on while I threw a few logs into my wood stove. Call me old-fashioned, but I couldn't stand gas fireplaces. There's something I find incredibly wrong about having a fire started with the click of a button. Sure, everything else in my chalet was top of the line, just like the other 9 in this row of 10, but this was something I couldn't budge on, and I didn't let them put that faux wood monstrosity in there. Stoking the roaring fire, it began to crank out the heat, so I went to the kitchen and figured out what I could make. The grocery delivery brought so many options, but I didn't really feel like cooking. Rather, something fast. Lazy. So, I made a sandwich. I was halfway done with the meal when the power began flickering. Stopping my bite mid-chew, I waited a few moments and it came back on. I finished my ham and cheese when it went off again. The beeping of my generator was a relief. It kicked all of my power back on, gloriously shining throughout the house. I went around and flipped lights off, wanting to conserve what I could in the meantime. Looking out my front window, I saw a very unusual sight to the left of me. The woman from next door grabbing bundles of wood that were stacked outside, while her little dog sniffed around the pavement. The dog on the leash was as far away from her as it could get before she motioned with her head for it to come back inside, to which the little dog minded and went back over to her. But they didn't go inside. She dropped the wood after a moment, picked up her dog, and disappeared. Sitting on the couch, I thought of all the places she might have gone on foot with a little dog in a pink coat in this brewing storm and cold front. Before my phone broke, my weather app said tonight was going to reach record lows. Running my hands through my hair, I realized I needed to go out and see if this woman needed help. Every year, tourists got rescued from danger on this mountain, but tonight, it might have been happening right in my backyard. As I stood up to put my ski layers back on, a knock at the door caught me by surprise. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but it appears that I'm locked out and we are absolutely frigid cold right now. I see that your power is on. Do you think that I could perhaps come in and use your phone?" I was so caught off guard by the woman standing on my porch holding a shivering dog that I just nodded and let them in. It was the woman staying next door, the woman from the gondola ride, the woman who had been creeping into my thoughts ever since I saw her yesterday, and I didn't even know what to say right now. "Of course," I mumbled. Then I remembered my phone was broken. My phone is broken. I shut the door behind them to keep the heat in the house. When I saw her eyes look beyond me, I kept it unlocked as I didn't want to put off any creepy vibes, and she nodded. "Oh, okay then. Mine is inside my chalet. What should I do?" My mind was blank as she spoke. Did she say she was locked out? "I have a key for the other chalets. Which one is yours?" Her eyes widened as I spoke. "Why do you have a key to my rental?" I was digging through my kitchen drawer when I found the key ring. Long story. Her jaw dropped. After a long pause, she mumbled something under her breath. "Okay, then?" She looked at me with her arms crossed, still holding her dog. I could tell she was skeptical, just waiting to jump down my throat with questions, but there was a hesitation. Finally, she relented, looking around my chalet. Mine, unlike the others, had rustic barnwood floors and ceilings. What no one ever talks about is how barnwood is the most expensive type of material you can get. I liked it because it reminded me of home on the ranch. "I'm in chalet 2, she said. "Here you go. Do you want me to help you?" Chivalry isn't dead, but as soon as I said it, I wondered just what I would be helping her with. "No, that's okay. I think I can manage." She smiled a radiant, toothy grin, took the key, and spun around on her heels. I'm Presley, by the way, here for the week. Hopefully the power comes back on. Presley. Ford, nice to meet you, Presley. She didn't turn back around. If you need anything at all, I'll be here. This was entirely out of character for me, as I had been retreated from the entirety of civilization, but it didn't seem like Presley even knew who I was, and that was fine with me. Then, she stopped in her tracks. Wait, I know you. A pit formed in my stomach at her words. Then she pointed to the tiger gator on the hook near my front door. You sat across from me in the gondola this morning. She grinned again, nearly taking me out with relief. I was wondering who was under that mask. Well, I better go. Thanks, Ford. And with that, she was back outside, and the door shut behind her. The snow melting on my floors was the only sign she had been there at all. I caught myself going to the window at lightning speed to see if she made it back into her chalet next to mine, and she did. Get a grip, Ford. You have too much riding this weekend to be distracted by a woman, not to mention your decision about dating again. Talking to myself was a sure sign I'd been alone at home for too long. Now, with this neighbor situation, I was in trouble. That's so cute. Also, ain't nothing wrong with talking to yourself. I do it all the time. Okay, chapter 3. Back to Presley. Locked out, let in. Knocking on a random door made me remember all of those true crime specials I watched late at night in college. Sure, the likelihood that someone in one of those chalets was a serial killer was low, but never zero. So when the door opened to a little old lady looking in my direction, I was relieved. Hello, dear, she said with an endearing southern accent. Hi, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I've just been locked out of my chalet. Do you possibly have a phone I could use? Her eyes widened as she shook her head. No, I'm afraid not. I've managed to not keep up with technology, much to my children's chagrin. My kids were still out on the slopes. They have one if you'd like to come inside and wait. I have the fire going. If your little one can wait outside, that is. I'm deathly allergic, I'm afraid. As she pointed at Priscilla, I didn't bother with the spiel about her being more hypoallergenic than most dogs. I certainly wasn't looking to impose, nor was I willing to keep Priscilla outside. I looked down to the rest of the chalets. I thought I'd start with number 1 to see if anyone could help me, but I still had 8 more. That's okay. I might come back if I can't find one sooner, I said, giving her a smile. She reciprocated the gesture and shut the door, and Priscilla and I chugged on. Trudging through the snow that separated the chalets, I considered my options. If someone wasn't in the rest of these with the phone ready to use, I could walk to the nearest business and see about using their phone. But when I got said phone, who was I going to call? I hadn't thought that one through. I'd have to remember the name of my property management company I booked through. Was it Mountain Chalets or Chalets in the Mountains? Groaning, I realized I'd have to ask them to look up a few sites so I could confirm even which one it was. Once again, my insecurities and trauma of being called too much by the last few years of dates, which admittedly were few, came back into play. I had been trying my hardest to tiptoe around people lest they caught on my reputation. I had been trying my hardest to tiptoe around people lest they caught on to my reputation. The truth? I didn't think I was too much of anything. I was successful in my career, inquisitive and creative, but why did that mean I must become a doormat for men to wipe their feet on, so that they didn't feel less than? I just didn't believe God created me with my gifts and abilities to be putting them away whenever a man came around. Ugh. Shaking off my past, I handed it over to God as I stepped over onto the clear driveway of the next chalet. Lord, I am perfectly content with your love. I do not need a man to fulfill me. As I peered up at Chalet 3, a glow from inside and a humming of a generator told me this chalet was prepared for an outage. I gave off an amber glow like a lantern in this blizzard. I excitedly knocked on the door, but nothing could prepare me for the handsome jawline that opened that door. It was him, the cowboy from the billboards. I was certain of it. That stubble, that jawline, the scar on his face, he was drop-dead gorgeous. And there I was, mumbling about needing help. I took in his looks. He had dark brown hair that was long enough to run his fingers through, but short enough that it was manly. Several inches taller than me. I guess he was 6 feet tall. He relented, and I was inside, dripping wet snow over his beautiful barnwood floors. Oh, these puppies are heated, too. He has good taste. Ford, as he introduced himself, told me his phone was broken. There was a real epidemic of phones around these chalets. Was Sage Mountain where smartphones came to die? While contemplating this, I got momentarily lost in his chestnut eyes. It was so warm and toasty in there. I found myself starting to not care what he said when he had a key. I found myself starting to not care when he said he had a key to my rented chalet. Why? I had so many questions, but I stopped myself. That was usually where I got into the danger zone, and people wrote me off before they even knew me. Wait, why did I care? Was it not just 30 seconds ago I told God I was perfectly content? His chalet was a little more rustic, personalized. I realized this chalet wasn't a rental, but he owned it. If my chalet was alpine chic, this was ranch rich, I decided. I wondered if he lived in it full time. Was he single or married? I didn't see a ring on his finger, not that I was interested. I reminded myself and God, as I was constantly cluing him into my every thought, but just for the sake of knowledge. I did work in publishing after all. Heck, I might write a book of my own one day, and this could be prime information, whether or not this handsome, the most gorgeous man I'd ever seen up close, was available. Available or not, he certainly didn't seem emotionally available. His words were few, but there was a kindness to him, a stillness, maybe a water that ran deep, if you will. Exactly the type of man that I repelled with my every move. Oh, that's heartbreaking. My gosh. My thoughts went back to Parker, a guy I went on 2 dates with. One more date than usual. He told me I was beautiful and brought me flowers. I thought, this could be it. But by the end of the date, he said being around me was akin to experiencing the Spanish Inquisition. How was I supposed to know that I couldn't ask questions about the movie he picked out for us to watch on his backyard projector? I just wanted to know the name, who the actors were, and the year it was made. Was this popcorn from a bag? I tried to avoid Seedles. Who did the landscaping? It was nice, but needed a string of twinkle lights. Back to the movie, I may have looked up the filming location when he lost his mind. Turned the movie off. I was hurt, but shocked at his true colors. The man went from sweet and kind to angry and short-tempered. I was relieved that I found out when I did, rather than months down the road. What the heck? Pfft. Now, as I said sorry. Only problem when talking to yourself is when you get a response. Valid. Honestly, valid. Unless it's a response from God, don't want it. Or, obviously, if someone sneaks up and you don't know they're there. That was funny. Okay. Let's see, where was I? Let's see. Now, as I stood before this hunk of a cowboy, I kept my pain to myself and let our encounter be short-lived. No lollygagging, no loitering of any kind. It was when I turned to leave with the key to my chalet in hand that I noticed the tiger mask hanging from a hook, and the words were out of my mouth before I could control it. I could feel the energy in the room change, as if he was cringing that I was still here, but he was sitting across from me in the gondola that morning. Now, I knew why he was wearing the disguise. He was quite a famous figure. I knew better than to point either of those facts out. He was just trying to have a good time. I smirked at the thought of that woman going on and on about how good-looking he was. Little did she know he was sitting right next to her. Leaving his chalet, I tried not to notice that his heated floors melted some snow right off my boots. Surely he was used to that. Priscilla and I were back outside, where I took the deepest breath of fresh air that I could muster, while I processed what had just happened. The key slid into the lock as it should have, and turned easily. I let out the breath I was holding. It was going to be okay. I put Priscilla down in her warm bed while I tiptoed back out to my front door and grabbed the firewood I collected, not letting the door shut behind me. Bringing it back inside, the chill in the air tickled my throat. It sure got cold in here fast, I said to Priscilla, who was sitting on top of her blankets as she shivered dramatically, watching me load the wood stove. After it was full of wood, I took a long match from the coffee table that was sitting next to a candle and swiped it on its box. The zip of the flame was comforting and reassuring, but when I threw it into the stove, nothing happened. Watching the little flame move down the length of the match until it fizzled out. This starting a fire thing was harder than I thought. Oh, Lord. Priscilla, I knew I should have put you into Girl Scouts last summer, I said sarcastically as I looked for some kind of paper I could throw inside to start the fire. Then it dawned on me. I had piles, if not dozens, of manuscripts in the back of my car. Surely, in an emergency type of situation like this, burning 1 or 3 would be warranted? Heck, it wasn't like I didn't print them out on my own printer. I had them all still backed up on my computer. But the guilt of burning a book, be it in any form, rocked me. Good girl. I worked out an elaborate plan in my head as I propped the door open and walked to my car to retrieve them. I would write down all of the important facts, author's name, title, and contact information, and the first thing I'd do when I returned to work was reprint them. The Love Bear Goes to Space by Terry Salmon. I read the first title aloud as I shoved it into the stove. What does this book have to do with Jesus? I asked rhetorically, holding back a laugh. I'm sorry, Love Bear. Your sacrifice is for central heating. I retrieved another match, zipped its strip, and waited for the inferno. Within seconds, I saw flames, the warmth quickly spreading. But before I knew it, so did thick black smoke. What in the world, Love Bear? The chalet was filling up with black smoke from the wood stove. I closed the door of the stove, locking its latch, but it just kept spreading. Jumping into action, I grabbed Priscilla, covered her head in my jacket, and ran to open a window. The only problem? The smoke was filling the room faster than I could move. We had no choice but to open the front door and stand outside while it cleared. I'm sorry, sweet girl. I kissed Priscilla on the head as her body trembled in the plunging temps, despite her wearing a jacket, boots, and being zipped up cozy in my own jacket. After a few minutes of holding the door open, I heard a voice behind me. Is everything okay in there? It was such a handsome, rugged cowboy voice. I knew it could only be one person. Turning, I found myself face to face with Ford, who was wearing a black winter jacket jeans, and what could only be described as work boots. He had a baseball cap yanked halfway down his eyebrows, as if he was trying to conceal his identity again, but there was no concealing that jawline. No, not really, I sighed. I sighed, knowing I was moving back into the territory of being a pain in someone's rear, but I didn't care. I was freezing. Priscilla was freezing. I peered over to the Sage Mountain Resort. I think this trip is doomed. I should just go get a hotel, I shrugged. What's wrong in there, despite the power being out? Ford asked. The wood stove is spreading smoke everywhere, and I thought I'd, air it out. His eyes widened as he ran inside, his forearm covering his mouth and nose. After a few minutes, he came back out to the porch. The chimney isn't working properly. Seems someone cut a few corners upon install. He squeezed the bridge of his nose with his fingers. The chimney cap has to be higher than the ridge of the house. I can't believe this passed inspection. His annoyance went beyond neighborly. You can't stay there unless the power comes back on. I nodded, thinking about my options and remembering the cute boutique hotel I walked past this morning on my way to the gondola. What was it? The Tucked Inn, perhaps? Okay, hopefully the property managers can refund me for this. I spent a small fortune to stay here this week. I let myself commiserate for a moment. They will. Ford crossed his arms. I tilted my head, wanting to ask him how he knew that. Was he friends with them? Maybe he knew the owners? My mind went back to him having a key. Maybe he helped out, like a superintendent situation. But why would the multi-millionaire face of ski joring need to be doing that? Thanks for your help, Ford. I just need to grab my bags. Would you mind, holding Priscilla for a moment? I would hate for her to breathe in the smoke. His eyes widened again as I handed him a little bundle of joy. He didn't wrap her in his jacket like I had, so I knew I had to be fast. Upstairs, I tossed everything I brought back into my suitcase and hastily zipped it up. My ski boots went into a duffel. I brought those to the front porch and made one more quick trip back to the kitchen, where I put all of my food into a large reusable bag. I hope I get a room with a fridge for this stuff, I thought to myself. Back outside, Ford was picking up my luggage and loading it back into the back of my Yukon. Thank you for your help. I really appreciate it. I reached out to take Priscilla from his arms, but paused when I noticed she wasn't even shaking. He nodded, handing her over, and she immediately started the cold act again. You're welcome to come inside and warm up for a few minutes while you look for a room. I have a computer you can use. That didn't sound like such a bad idea. Going from hotel to hotel seemed daunting. I'd appreciate that. Thanks. Ford nodded and went ahead of me to open the door of his chalet, motioning for me to go inside first. It was like walking into a warm cloud. I stepped out of my shoes to be polite, sitting on his small entryway bench to do so. I also removed Priscilla's boots and thought I heard a chuckle coming from Ford when I did so. Taking off her shoes was all Priscilla lived for at this moment. She immediately started zooming around his house and jumping on and off his couches in the process. I'm sorry, she's excited to be here, I think. I couldn't believe her burst of energy. But at the same time, I thought it was adorable. I peered over at Ford, who didn't seem to react at all. That's fine by me. She needs to get her exercise somehow. He poured himself a cup of coffee, pointed to it. Do you want one? I shook my head. Better not, or I'll be up all night. He nodded and went into another room where I heard a computer boot up. It's all ready for you. I have the Sage Mountain Resort site pulled up for you. It has every single lodging option we have. Great. Thanks, Ford. I'll just be right back. Priscilla? I called out to her as it looked like she was a pinball bouncing around his furniture. Inside of Ford's office, there was a beautiful floor to... Oh, sorry. I said that wrong. I'll just be right back, Priscilla. She was talking to the dog. Inside of Ford's office, there was a beautiful floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the horse stables across the way. The cold air was heavy and settled around the mountains, creating a dreamlike fog atmosphere. His hand-carved wooden desk had a supple leather topper attached with brass tacks. It was very Western, and as I looked around, I noticed all of it was. In the chalet I rented, everything was exquisitely modern and alpine chic. In Ford's chalet, it was like stepping into a ranch house. I liked it. Adding in the dates of my nearly week-long stay, minus one night, yielded no results. Okay, maybe I need to stay a few places. I took off half the nights and looked for something the next 3 days. Nothing. How about 2 nights? I asked the computer as my searches became frantic. Sorry, no results. Tonight. That gives me 1 night to pray for the roads to open, and at least then I could go back home. Sold out. Tiptoeing back to the living room, I tried to hide my expression from Ford, but it didn't work. He caught my eyes with his. Well? He asked. I shook my head. Everything is sold out. I swallowed the lump in my throat. But it's okay. We have enough warm blankets, and surely the chalet won't be that bad without heat. And if the roads open back up... Ford licked away, and I trailed off. Recalling before the wood stove incident, I could see my breath. It was bone-chilling inside. You can stay here. He didn't make eye contact with me, but instead walked to the window. The snow was falling again. Hard. While it was made for perfect conditions on the slopes, it was more than a little daunting to be trapped by it. In a town I wasn't from. In a stranger's chalet. A stranger that was in fact extremely gorgeous, which made it even more upsetting. Now, this handsome man was saying I could stay here? I looked around and saw that Priscilla was snoring loudly as she slept on a couch cushion. There was also a blanket half pulled up around her, which I didn't know she burrowed under or... He's gonna love her dog. Oh, sorry, I got a tickle. I need a drink of water. Okay. There was also a blanket half pulled up around her, which I didn't know if she burrowed under or... Where would I sleep? All of his furniture was luxurious. His tooled leather couch didn't necessarily look like it was meant for a sleepover, and I certainly wouldn't be sharing his room. The idea of it got me so fired up I felt angry. Is that his motivation here? Get me in his bedroom? Because it ain't happening, buddy. I'd rather camp in a frozen house than entertain that idea for even a second. In the guest bedroom, this has more than one room, you know. The relief washed over me, but the reality of sharing a home with a man who was not my husband sharpened my mind. The fact was, I had nowhere to go right now. There was a bedroom here that I would be welcome to sleep in. I just had to keep my wits about me. I don't know, Ford. To be honest, I am feeling hesitant to cohabitate with a man who is not my husband. The words came out of my mouth faster than I could stop them. Here we go. The crazy train had left the station. This was usually where a man piped up to say I was ridiculous or unbearable to be around. I wanted to watch his expression, but he still faced the window. Are you married? Ford asked, turning to me. No, I am just waiting for that, is what I mean. Cringe. Now he probably had no idea what we were talking about. After a motionless moment, he nodded. I promise to be a gentleman, and we will get you back into your chalet as soon as possible. I'll send an email to the maintenance crew today. Thank you. Okay, this was fine. I just needed to keep those wits and my dignity, and whatever I did not need to fall for this gorgeous, introspective, quiet, brooding cowboy. Lord, please put a barrier between me and this man so I don't form any ridiculous feelings for him. Foreshadowing! Ford showed me the room I would be staying in. It was downstairs, and I was relieved it had a lock on the door. There was one large picture window above the dresser, situated to watch the snow fall while lying in the down feather-filled bed. Ford's chalet was larger than the one I rented, to allow for this bedroom and his office plus another room turned into a gym. In my rented chalet, there was just the 2 rooms and the upstairs loft. It was dreamy and serene with its alpine style, and now I was living in a cowboy world. The pictures on the wall were Western paintings of horses and snowy landscapes. There was almost nothing personal in this room, except for maybe one small yellow feather on the counter. I picked it up. I couldn't help myself when Ford came barreling in with my suitcases. I went out and got these. He set them down after carrying them effortlessly, as I still had the feather up in between us. This is pretty. I couldn't have said anything lamer, I decided, and set the feather down. Oh, that's funny. Okay, wait, I gotta highlight that. That was really funny. My cleaning crew found that. They thought this room needed some color. He shrugged and almost cracked a smile. Looking around, the furniture was dark wood, the bedding was crisp white, and the paintings were of light, colorless aesthetic. The feather was doing a lot of heavy lifting here, being the only pop in this room. This room is different from your other rooms, I said, trying to not be too inquisitive, pushy, annoying. But I couldn't help but notice just how out of the ordinary this room was compared to the rest of his chalet that was decked out in barnwood, leather, and ski cowboy aesthetic. Yeah, I've never used this room or had guests here, until now. How long have you lived here? I felt the questions bubbling up inside of me as I started with the simple one. A year. He ran his fingers through his beautiful, thick brown hair. Geez, time really flies. No friends or family have come to visit you in that time frame? I resisted crossing my arms as best as I could, but unless he was a friendless orphan, I started to feel defensive about this situation. Nah, my parents have passed away. I have a brother up on our family ranch in Bighorn, Wyoming, where I grew up, but we weren't close, and all of my friends... Oh, we aren't close. Oh, interesting. Something. Trauma, maybe, might be there. Okay. Nah, my parents have passed away. I have a brother up on our family ranch in Bighorn, Wyoming, where I grew up, but we aren't close. And all of my friends have chalets of their own. Or what? That was it. You can't make words spoken unsaid. And my pain in the rear ways had come roaring back. You can't make words spoken Oh, okay, sorry. I don't know why that, sentence was so hard for me. Let's see, sorry. And all of my friends have chalets of their own, or what? That was it. You can't make words spoken unsaid. And my pain in the rear ways had come roaring back. We've gone our separate ways. Ford looked uncomfortable by my questions, or maybe the room felt that way. There was a tension here, but unlike the other men I dealt with over the years, I couldn't tell if Ford was annoyed with me like they had been. I didn't sense an aggravation behind his eyes, but maybe something else. I couldn't put my finger on it. For now, I would let it go. Got it. Well, I'm honored to be your first guest. I hope we can get through to the property manager company and get this resolved quickly. Unfortunately, I don't think they're going to be able to fix that chimney. I'm appalled that I didn't see it before today. That chalet was the last one to be finished and the only one I didn't personally inspect. Figures. Ford walked out of the guest bedroom and went and sat on the couch. I followed. Why would you personally inspect the chalets? I lifted my brows at him. It took all the strength I had to resist tapping my foot while waiting for an answer. Because I own them. My jaw dropped. He looked away, surely contemplating a way to climb up the power poles and restore power on his own. Where's a key and a kite when you need one? Well, that's nice. It's good to be diversified. Surely an athlete can't compete forever. Diversified? What was I, a financial advisor? And my comment about his inevitable retirement was so cringe. I was about to duct tape my own mouth shut when he got up and walked to the window. Ain't that the truth? Priscilla let out a loud snore and woke herself up. I went to her while she got familiarized with her surroundings. Did you take a good nappy? I loved talking to her and baby talk and loved being treated like the little princess that she was. This time, however, she looked right past me, like it wasn't me that she was looking for. She sat up, turned, and locked her eyes on the back of Ford. Looked like my little girl had a crush on someone. Should we go outside and go potty? I knew if I didn't take her out every few hours, she would wake up in the middle of the night to go out, and the last thing I wanted to do was to be traipsing around this chalet past midnight. After getting her bundled up in a bright blue jacket, which was a little heavier than her pink one, and putting her snow booties back on, we headed for the door. Ford, still standing at the window, watching the snow fall, walked over and opened the door for us. Thank you, I said, acknowledging his gentlemanly ways. Priscilla's eyes were still glued to him, and she even tried to sniff him as he stepped by us to get to the door. He flipped a switch before shutting the door behind us, and the whole valley was lit up by his floodlights. It wasn't yet pitch black out, but the light had been so dim it was hard to see. Now I could see everything. Priscilla's inner monologue. These boots might look fabulous on me, darling, but they are a far cry from Chanel. Big fat snowflakes were falling fast. I closed my eyes and stuck my tongue out to catch them, bringing waves of fond memories of my childhood back to me. After Priscilla was finished, we ran back to the door, frozen solid. Just 30 seconds being outside, and my teeth were chattering, and I was covered in snow. Oh, that's the end of the chapter! Fun. Okay. Definitely enjoying this so far. Okay, this book is only 173 pages, so it'll probably be a fairly quick read. A little bit shorter than I thought. So I'm already a quarter of the way through, which is fun. Which actually would be good because then I feel like it'll be less it'll be less streams for me to finish it, which is fun. Okay. I think I'll maybe do one more chapter. Okay, chapter 4, Ford. Also, it's interesting, this is just a quick note that I don't want to forget and also just make a note of. It is dual perspective, so she's going back and forth between the characters, but it's interesting because there's a little bit more overlap than a lot of the dual perspective books that I've read. I think a lot of the books just kind of go back and forth, and the next chapter will kind of pick up where they left off, but this one kind of overlaps the events that are happening, so you get a little bit of insight into what the other person is thinking from what you just read from the other person's perspective, which I do kind of like, because I don't feel like it's too much overlap where you're feeling like you're reading the whole scene again, like a Groundhog Day, but it's enough where you get to see a little bit more into what the other person was experiencing at the time, which I think is kind of cool. Okay, chapter 4, Ford. Snowbound hospitality. The storm weighed heavily on the rooftops. Plows were groaning in the distance, and while the power outage was straining on the community, I was surprised that not more of the chalet guests had come knocking. It was strange having guests. As I watched Presley and her little fluffy dog that was more bundled up than I'd ever seen any creature on Earth navigate the outdoors in the snow, it made me feel something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Next thing you know, that dog was going to have a set of spurs on those boots. I didn't know what it was. Annoyance? Acceptance? What did I know? What I did know, this woman was trouble. Presley sure did have a lot of questions, and I sure hated questions. It was making me remember why I was so relieved to break my phone earlier. That reminded me, I needed to get them into another chalet. I instinctively reached for my phone, and remembered again that it was shattered, so I looked at my watch. It was past 5 on a Friday. There was no one at the office tonight. With the road shut down, what kind of crew was really going to be able to get in here to fix that chimney? It was unlikely that it was going to get done in the short time this woman was here. Besides, I'd be out most of the week and the weekend with the winter games and all. I bet I'd barely see this woman. We'd be like 2 ships passing in the night. Well, 3 ships if you counted Priscilla. I didn't know what was more ridiculous, little dogs or their required clothing. Presley and her dog came racing back in the chalet, and the dog waited patiently while Presley took off those little snow boots. The dog even stuck her legs out one by one, as if to assist. There ain't nothing natural about a dog needing clothes or shoes. Then she made an announcement about making a late dinner and asked if I wanted anything. Truthfully, I was starved after my day on the slopes, but I wasn't yet prepared to share a meal with this woman. I'm all right. I'll probably throw something on the stove in a minute. That did the trick, and she got to making her meal while her little dog, now wearing footed pajamas with pink snowflakes all over, sat on top of a pair of shoes I had on the floor and watched me. I tilted my head to the side, and her eyes followed. Tilting it to the other side, she followed again. I didn't know if that meant she liked me or she hated me, but I decided she was just being protective of her mom. It was sort of funny, in a way, how much personality she had. As Presley cooked, the aromas of her meal wafted right into my nostrils. She hummed a familiar tune while she stirred the pot in it with my wooden spoon. I wanted to ask her what song, as I couldn't necessarily Shazam it, but I just listened instead. When I closed my eyes, it was almost like having Poppy back here with me. My dog, a much larger, respectable-sized dog, would be kind of where Priscilla was sitting, but he would be enjoying his chew bone instead of singling me out with an intense, obsessive gaze. It pained me to think of him. I missed that dog. My mind went back to the wedding photo I saw of Poppy. All of my friends were probably at that wedding. Heck, my dog was probably the ring bearer. Traitors. Other than my brother, whom I was not close with, I was completely alone in the world. If only I could have ended the engagement I had with God. Oh, sorry. If only... Oh, my gosh. If only could I... Oh, my gosh. My brain is short-circuiting, you guys. Jeez Louise. If only I could have ended the estrangement I had with God. Dinner's ready. Presley interrupted my thoughts. I opened my eyes and saw that she had 2 bowls of food on the table. Nothing fancy, just some curry. I added a few things to it to jazz it up. I hope you don't have any food allergies. I looked at her like she was from another planet. I said I didn't want food. I stood, not sure what I was supposed to do. She didn't back down. And it's the least I could do, since you are putting me and Priscilla up for the time being. So here, please eat the food I prepared. Taking a few cautious steps forward, the aroma of the food made my mind relent. It smelled delicious, and my stomach did a churn to let me know I was in fact starving. As I sat down on the opposite chair Presley was in, I reached for the utensils, where Presley put her palms together, closed her eyes, and started to pray out loud. Lord, thank you for this meal. May it provide nourishment to our bodies. Thank you for this storm bringing lots of wonderful snow to Sage Mountain. Thank you for keeping Priscilla and me safe by bringing us to Ford. And we thank you for Ford. Without his hospitality, I don't know where we would be tonight. Please, Lord, bless him. In your name, amen. When her prayer was done, though I had been following along with her words, I had been watching her for the whole time. The shine of her nail polish reflected under the light of my antler chandelier, while her hands were pressed together. They were pressed together because she was praying. My mind did some tumbling while I worked this out. Amen, I mumbled, realizing I was in the presence of a godly woman. Oh, that's so funny. I didn't come across those too often in my life these days. I guess you could have said because of my dating decision I didn't come across any woman anymore. I took a bite of the curry. The chances of it not being delicious were slim to none, and I was right. It was fantastic. It was nice to have something different. My meals mainly consisted of red meat and potatoes, and I didn't detect either in this dish. Presley didn't say much while we ate, which was fine with me. She was guarded, but I was too. It was a relief knowing that we both had our walls up, and this wasn't going to turn into something awkward. As I took the last bite of the red curry, a squeaking noise came out from under the table. Her dog, Priscilla, had a toy in her mouth that she was squeaking ever so softly, as if to get my attention. Presley looked under the table, asking the dog to hand her the toy so she could throw it, appearing to appeal to this dog's every whim and fancy. But the dog didn't budge, keeping her eyes on me. I believe she may want you to throw it. Presley put her hands up with an apologetic look on her face, as if the simple task of throwing a dog toy would put me over the edge and I'd send them out in the cold. Before I could, she reached under the table and picked the dog up, who still had the toy securely in her bite. While she held Priscilla in one arm, she picked up her dish with the other, quietly loading the dirty items into my dishwasher. I stayed at the table, considering if I wanted to throw the dog's toy for her or not. I decided that if it happened again, I would throw it for her. I returned to my bedroom after Presley and her pooch went to the guest bedroom and called out good night. I replied, a simple night, and put my bowl into the dishwasher and turned it on. Tomorrow I had a long training day, the last one before the games, with my teammate Chase, my horseback rider, so I prepped some oatmeal that would cure in the fridge overnight. Normally, I'd make a big breakfast, but now that I had guests, I was aware they might have a different sleeping pattern than I did. I was an up at dawn sort of man. I remembered how much that irritated Poppy. She would always go on about her needing her beauty sleep. Yes, we were crazy incompatible, but I cringed as I thought about the patterns we had set. We shouldn't have known that about each other because we weren't married. While we didn't live together, I had so many mistakes in my life that I didn't see a reason to improve upon it or set new standards when I met her. I wanted her to fit perfectly into my life that I was creating, as it grew further and further from God. Closing the door of my bedroom, I found myself tiptoeing around the room, holding the light switches tightly. to ensure no sounds were made. For all I knew, Presley was up reading or a deep sleeper, but I did it anyway. Crawling into bed, I reflected upon the changes today brought. Presley's prayer was at the top of my mind. There were so many areas of my life that were tarnished, my relationship with God being just one of the many, but her prayer seemed so easy. Was it just that easy to come back to him? For my transgressions to be forgiven? For God to forget them forever? I wondered. It is that easy. As far as the east is from the west, so does God remove your sins from you. Life without my phone meant no alarm set. The moment I opened my eyes the next morning, I sat up in a panic, thinking I'd already missed my training session at 8. Opening my automatic blinds, the light for this time of year looked like it could be anywhere from 6:30 to 7:30. Scrambling to my closet, I threw on some clothes that I would wear under my ski things in case I had slept in. Opening the door, I stopped in my tracks at the aroma and sizzling that only bacon could make. "Good morning. I hope I didn't wake you." Presley, in her ski clothes and hair pulled back into a braid, looked at me with her clean face and bright blue eyes. Her dog ambled quickly over to my feet, standing up on her hind legs as if to crawl up mine. "No, you didn't." "Oh, sorry. Gosh. No, you didn't. What time is it?" I looked around as if I had forgotten that I didn't have a clock in sight. I really did rely on my cell phone for everything these days, and I hated that. "A 6:45. I had to check the time on your computer. I hope you don't mind. I can't seem to find my phone charger anywhere. Roads closed, power's out, not a cell phone between us." She looked back up at me. "Do you have somewhere you need to be?" Her inquisitive look from yesterday returned. "I have to be at the track at 8 sharp for my last training session. Games are this weekend, after all." She nodded, turning the bacon in the pan. There was at least a pound of bacon being fried, and I found myself hoping that some of that was for me. "Want some of this?" I couldn't find any Tupperware here to save it in the fridge, so I just made the whole pack. I smirked at the thought of her looking through my cabinets to find Tupperware. I was sure she was extremely disappointed to see that I had barely had the servingware for 2. Though I had a company that helped furnish this home, I didn't see need for an extravagant number of things. Nope, nothing extra, just the essentials. "Sure," I said nonchalantly, but was thrilled. The oatmeal I made last night would still serve me as an extra kick on my way to the track, but this protein would help me out better. The toaster popped, revealing 2 slices of thick and crusty sourdough bread, my favorite. I watched as Presley sliced an heirloom tomato up, topping each piece of bread and filling it with bacon. "Just give me 2 minutes for the eggs." I watched as she cracked colorful farm eggs over the cast iron skillet, expertly flipping them each after a moment. They popped and sizzled as I made a fresh brew of pour-over coffee. "Would you like a cup?" My offer was slight in comparison to the feast she was preparing. She nodded. "Sure, I like mine with heavy cream. I have some in your fridge." She smiled, beaming her bright white teeth. I opened the fridge and found it full of colorful vegetables and all sorts of extravagant items. The cream was sitting on the top shelf. It was from a small local farm, and the label read organic and certified humanely treated. Having grown up on a Wyoming ranch myself, I liked that she shopped locally and cared about the origins of her food. What was I doing? Admiring the food this stranger in my home shopped for? Ford, get your head in the game. After pouring her coffee, I set her mug and the creamer on the table. She plated the food, topping the delicious-looking toasts with the fried eggs. Instead of having mine at the table, I graciously accepted the plate, and I ate it standing up, hovering over the sink. Her eyes darted to the table, and if I could hear her thoughts, I'd bank on her wondering why I wasn't going to sit down. But despite having plenty of time this morning, I also had plenty of reservations about this situation, this woman, and now this little dog who was looking up at me intently while I ate, hoping I'd drop a bite. As I looked down at the furry creature, who today was wearing a blue sweater with a matching bow on her head, around a little ponytail at that, I couldn't help but notice she was getting impatient. It seemed the little princess was used to getting little table scraps and treats. I didn't know which of these foods were safe, so when my last bite consisted of a small leftover piece of bread half the size of my thumb, I let it drop. She caught it in her mouth like the little hunter-gatherer that she was inside under all the clothes, the boots, the hairdo. Dogs were meant to be wild. I had always taken this into account when I raised them, and with my last dog, before Poppy took him with her, he was still not... Dogs were meant to be wild. I had always taken this into account when I raised them, and with my last dog, before Poppy took him with her. He was still not a looming giant, but Australian Shepherds were a respectable size. Let's just say he could fend for himself if he got outside unsupervised for a moment. This little creature, on the other hand, I don't think she could survive at a pet store without help. Once she devoured the bite of bread, she gave me a little wag. I took it as her way of thanking me. She immediately went to my pair of boots that were sitting by the front door and sat on them, toppling them over in the process. As I put my plate in the dishwasher and thanked Presley for preparing it, I walked over to her dog, who was holding on to my boots for ransom. She was probably going to require another piece of bread. "What's going on here?" I whispered to her, putting my hands on my waist. I had to admit her personality was entertaining. Presley jumped up into action once again, as if her dog was going to get thrown out into the cold. "Oh, Priscilla, come here, sweetie. He needs those boots." She scooped up her dog and went back to the table, where she was cleaning up the leftover crumbs. As I sat on the bench to put on my boots, I found myself having a hard time mentally preparing for the day with them around. "Have a great training day." Presley said as she finished wiping down the counters after cooking. She really was trying to be a good guest. Thanks, and thank you for, cleaning up. Presley nodded. My words were weak, as if my coffee never hit my bloodstream. I considered having one more cup before I left, as I knew I still had time to do so, but something was telling me to leave, get away from the chalet, away from this woman. I walked outside without another word. Out in the cold, I realized I forgot my gloves. What a ridiculous mistake. I looked at my hands. I had always had thick skin, literally, not figuratively, much to my own chagrin, and I had trained before without gloves. But this close to the games, risking tearing up my hands on a rough rope, that would be a really stupid thing to do. Ugh, I was really considering going without gloves so that I could avoid my time with my house guest. What was happening to me? Turning back to the door of my own house, I paused. Should I knock? Then it dawned on me. This woman didn't have a key or the code to my chalet. If she got back before I did, which was very likely, as training can turn into an all-day affair once I got into caring for my animals, she would be out in the cold once again. The door opened while I contemplated life's biggest questions, and Presley was surprised to see me on the porch. She was wearing her ski helmet, goggles on top, and had her ski boots on. Her skis must have still been outside of her chalet next door. What's up? She asked, her eyebrows closing in on each other with her squint. The snow was gently falling around us, and the dull light made it hard to see. I forgot to give you the door code. Presley looked relieved. Oh, of course. Thank you, she said, and looked at me expectantly. Yep. I stood there, thinking about how my gloves were just on the other side of the door, along with that cup of coffee, my oatmeal that I was going to have for a snack, and her little dog that I felt could see right through the facade that was me holding this all together. Well, what is it? Presley couldn't hide her impatience, but she did a great job of trying. Oh, sorry, it's 0301. She repeated it a few times. Great, I got it memorized. What is that, your birthday or something? Good guess, I nodded. Oh, sorry. Good guess, I nodded. Nice, that's coming up fast. Happy birthday. She playfully punched me in the shoulder. I'm not really into birthdays. Or holidays, I said, shrugging it off. Presley just nodded. Honestly, I feel the same way. They can be so hard, especially when you're single. We stood in silence for a moment. Well, have a great one. I want to catch the first chair. And she was off. She was mighty speedy, despite her clunky ski boots, as she snatched up her skis, brushed the snow off of them, threw them over her shoulder, and disappeared into the busy street of skiers ahead. I have a feeling she was trying to get away from you and the awkward situation. Going back inside, I shut the door behind me and took a deep breath. The dog was excited to see me and acted like I'd been gone for hours as she hopped around me, wanting to be picked up. For a moment, I must have forgotten what I was doing, or all of those walls I had tightly built around my heart because I fulfilled the wish of Presley's dog and scooped her up like a football. She excitedly panted, wriggling around in my arms, trying to climb up towards my face. I held her in the crook of my arm while I made the extra cup of coffee, pouring it into a traveler cup. I found my gloves and shoved them into my jacket pocket that hung near the door. Apparently, I had forgotten that too. And lastly, I grabbed the oatmeal out of the fridge and gave the container a shake. As I leaned to set the dog down, she let out what I could call a combination of a bark and a groan. It was like she was threatening me if I did so. I couldn't help but laugh. I gotta go, little girl. She stomped around in a circle before letting herself up on my couch. You're pretty funny, you know that? I reached for the blanket that lay over the side of the couch. Presley must have tidied up this morning. I laid it around Priscilla. I couldn't even think of her name with a straight face. I wasn't a silly guy, but once I found something funny, I could never go on again without laughing about it. I left my chalet for the final time and got into my white Ram 3500 truck. First, I went to the stables and latched onto my horse trailer. I made sure the horses had plenty of hay, fresh water, and that the water heater to keep it from forming a giant block of ice was in proper working order. Thankfully, the stable had a generator, too. Topping off the generator with diesel fuel, I brought Buckshot out to the trailer. Here we go, boy. It's our last training day until the winter games. Buckshot was my strongest horse, but he was also the largest. He was at least 2 hands taller than Whiskey and Outlaw. One gallop from him could pull me farther than the others, but I also had to have more control for this reason. Knowing when to let up on the rope was crucial. Once we got to the training track, the crews for the winter games were hard at work next door, prepping the game track. We weren't allowed to do any practice runs on the official track, which led to some competitors having bouts of pre-game anxiety, but not me. This being my 5th time competing in the games, and the last, I knew that track like the back of my hand. My rider, Chase Mentok, was waiting for me at the entrance. You know, normally in this situation I'd be bringing my own horse. Chase started off the morning with a jab. If you had a horse, I would let you. I reached out and shook his hand. Chase was a great guy who was an expert horseman, but since moving to Sage Mountain to ski draw with me full time, he had yet to find housing he could afford, let alone horses. As it was, he had a wife and a baby, and did not need another mouth to feed. He worked full time as a horse trainer, which in this ski community wasn't exactly the biggest booby business, but he was making it work. His love of riding for ski drawers helped fuel his decision for living here, and I was grateful and compensated him well when we won. We split the winnings right down the middle. Jeez, my nose is getting stuffy for some reason. I was grateful and compensated him well when we won. We split the winnings right down the middle. Chase and I were a team. As Chase settled back shot, I slid into my ski boots and got the best slalom skier racers out of the backseat of my pickup and started waxing them. The conditions for the games were perfect. Compacted snow with a powdery top layer hiding icy spots. The jumps at the training track had been built a touch higher than the actual track had done in the past, per my request, so my training would keep me sharp enough to handle whatever they could throw at me. The only things our training area was missing were the flamethrowers that would go off as ski jurors passed certain points, an entertainment ploy, purely for the audience. But was it enough of a surprise that it could throw someone off? Sure. You ready? Chase asked as he was sitting in the saddle on buckshot. He was wearing his black cowboy hat, a pair of blue jeans, and a heavy felted coat. Then there was me, in full-blown ski gear, slipping on my helmet. I followed him over to the start of the track, just a few paces away, and clipped into my skis. Ready as I'll ever be, I said, nodding. Taking the rope in my hand, I started thinking the same way I did every race practice or with hundreds of spectators. People had been hard on me my entire life. I was raised to be a ranch hand, labor for my parents. The only sport I could muster the time for was ski joring, since it took place in the winter when ranching was a little less intensive. Our cattle wintered in a low pasture and the ranch next door fed them. In exchange for the relief and hay, my parents gave them 5 head of cattle, along with a meager payment. Back then, it was a good business practice. That cattle were enough to start their own mega ranch, which they did, of premium bloodline Angus. My parents allowed my sport and graciously supported me with the funds to get skis and boots at the local ski swaps. But they never really understood me. They loved me, but they wanted me to follow in their footsteps and be a rancher. To pass on the legacy to me was everything. Thankfully, my older brother Clint was on board with that vision. He was 10 years older than me and already growing into a man when I was born. He had great responsibility and was eager to do them. Sure, I was a cowboy through and through. I just didn't want to raise cattle, to be confined to an idea that my entire world was going to be that same plot of land. I wanted adventure, to see the world. I was there to work hard, which I certainly did, but the moment I had the chance to escape that life, I jumped ship into this one. My family never reached out to me much after that, which hurt me worse. My mother died a few years later after a battle with an illness they didn't even disclose to me. Then, my dad went. Clint did call me right before that one, but I was on a short trip to Italy, and I couldn't exactly leave. That decision had haunted me. And now, as I navigated the jumps and corners of this racetrack, using the rope of the racing horse in front of me to slack as I sped up and tightened as I slowed, I couldn't help but feel regret. I never considered that I wouldn't be married with a family of my own by now, a chance to do it differently, to right the wrongs of my own life. But after Poppy and my fall from God, which, to be honest with myself, happened long before her, I made a decision that I wouldn't date until I was back with God, forgiven, washed clean from sin. A swift movement around a corner, and for a split second I almost let go of the rope. Did I even want to do this sport? Did I enjoy it? I was here because I was good at it. Some said the best in the business. I had a wall full of trophies to prove it. Just one more race, I mumbled to myself as we finished our first time through the track. After the Winter Games 2026, the persona I'd so neatly crafted of Ford Prescott could fade out with the melting of the snow. I just didn't have a clue what I was going to do after that. That was our best time yet, Ford, Chase beamed, pulling a stopwatch out of his jacket. We were both panting as we caught our breath. Go again? I asked, and he nodded. Okay, perfect. I think that's a great place to stop. I'm at almost 2 hours. And I'm on chapter 5, so I read chapters 1 through 4, which I think is great. I'm on page 63, 36% of the way through the book so far. And so far, I'm really liking it. I'm liking the characters. I feel like you're getting enough personality. There's some little pieces of backstory. Hoping we get a little bit more insight into those backstories, but really liking the characters, how they're relating to each other. I think it's been a good dual perspective book, like I was saying earlier. And, yeah, I'm excited to keep reading next week. But yeah, if you guys want to keep up with me outside of just these streams, I have my Instagram, timetolaugh.34. I have my Substack, timetolaugh34, my YouTube, timetolaugh34, and then you can always go back and watch earlier streams. This is the second book that I'm reading out loud on my stream. I just finished a book called The Baby Catcher Gate by Wendy Jo Cerna on my last stream. That one took me, I think, 4 streams. No, I think it was 5 actually. But I just finished that one on my last one. So this is the second book I'm reading out loud, and my hope is that I can keep reading books out loud. So I'm going to keep reaching out to authors and asking them if I can read their books. I know I have one other one. I can't remember the name of the author right now, but I have another one that said that I could read up to 5 chapters of her book. So I'll probably do that as well, but I'm going to reach out to a couple more. If you guys have any suggestions for books that you would want me to read or authors that you think I should reach out to, let me know. Not necessarily a guarantee that I'll be able to read them out loud because I need permission, but doesn't hurt to ask, because what's the worst I can say? No. So yeah, that's the plan as of now for these streams, just to continue to read books out loud and keep chatting with you guys. I'll keep you guys updated on, bullet journal things and all that kind of stuff. But if you want to see any of my writing, or just see kind of, my posts about faith, or just kind of life updates and stuff, go ahead and go follow my Instagram. That's kind of my home base for everything, where I'll post clips from my streams, links to my Substack articles, all that kind of stuff. So, and I'm going to be working on recording and posting a couple reels for book reviews, because I finished 2 books so far this month, and I want to do some reviews for those. So working on a little outline for that I can work off of, and hopefully be posting those in the next week or 2. So yeah, had fun today. Thank you guys for dropping in, if you dropped in and watched, and I will see you guys next Monday at 10 a.m. Same time, same place, and I hope you guys have an amazing and blessed week. Happy Monday!